There are few games I hold in such high regard as Minecraft. The ones that instantly come to mind are The Last of Us for its extraordinary storytelling and characters. I think of The Witcher 3 for the same reasons, combined with its amazingly realized open world and the side quests therein. A recent addition, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, I think of for the same reasons. Fury and its fast-paced boss fights, its amazing music, and smooth yet harsh and fair combat also come to mind. What all these games have in common is, on the surface, quite simple. They excel in their fields. Minecraft, however, a game about mining and crafting, adding and removing, lacks such a simple, tangible reason for being great, outside of being the best blocky build game on the market. Hi,
What about the mysterious behavior of the barbecue lid?
But you can just simply call me Amazon. And today, and probably tomorrow, looking at the length of the video, we take a deep dive into Minecraft, a retrospective of epic proportions. But what might disappoint you is that I won't cover everything. In fact, I'll probably miss 99% of what Minecraft truly is. Not because of a lack of trying, but because me trying to make a video about Minecraft is like making a video about my entire life up until a certain point. So that's what this video is going to be about. Me, Minecraft, and the journey we all took to get where we are today. Not only as fans of Minecraft, but also as fans of the game that is the real world. The first part of this huge video is about my nostalgic journey through the many updates of Minecraft, a retrospective review. The second part is about Minecraft's many ports, with a focus on what makes them different and why the legacy console versions, the PS3 and Xbox 360 ones, are great. The third section is about Minecraft 1.12, which, in my opinion, stands as the peak of Minecraft's endgame, a deeper look at some of the features I overlook in the other sections of the video. Last but not least, I summarize and probably cry about nostalgia for a couple of minutes. It's probably worth a watch. But without further ado, get your food ready and your headphones on and go about your day because this video will take a while. So enjoy and thanks for watching. Minecraft is a game that one day just kind of existed in my life. I don't remember the specific date or even the particular year I started playing it, but I do know it was very early in its life cycle. The gameplay shown on screen is not the actual build that I played. That one I couldn't find, but it will suffice as a great way to show off the very basics of what makes Minecraft what it is. Some of these things may seem obvious, and most of them admittedly are. Minecraft is a game based on blocks existing and not existing. Minecraft is a game of creativity, painting whatever you want with the, at the time, minuscule amount of coloring pencils in the form of blocks. Minecraft is a game about deleting the randomized obstacles in your way and creating new ones for yourself. Also by that measure, Minecraft is more than a game. It's an activity that demands a lot of work from its players, like a job. It's a social media that introduces you to other like-minded and often not so like-minded people, screaming into a void of a text box looking for a reaction or just validation. But most importantly, Minecraft, the game about placing and breaking blocks in a crudely generated world, is more than itself. More than anything, because Minecraft is anything you want it to be. This is about as deep as this video gets. I will, within the walls of this video, study the very pillars of Minecraft with, in this first section, a focus on my nostalgic journey through the many updates of Minecraft and the many updates of my life. Let's begin then, with how I was born, or maybe more accurately, how my love for Minecraft was. I have always been a creative kid, and I argue that I still am. Maybe not the kid part of it, although that is highly debatable. But before I go into what I'm about to go into, I need to clue you into a friend I had, a vital part of my upbringing. I don't really talk to this friend anymore, but I'm not that bummed about it. Of course, I'm not happy about it, but we just grew apart. That's beside the point. This friend, that I will from this point on call Satipo, because of the existence of this picture, my friend and I in full Indiana Jones costume, me being the man himself. As a little aside, I love Indiana Jones. It's my childhood and I liked it a whole lot more than Star Wars growing up, and in many ways I still do, but I digress. This long-winded sidebar is about to end with a small but critical sentence. I love to make stuff. Satipo, my very best friend, came to the kindergarten every single morning with a single question. Where's Amazon? Except my name isn't actually Amazon, and he wasn't speaking English. The answer to the question was always the same. He's in the Lego room. This question was repeated so often, every single morning, that when Satipo came to school, he was instantly directed to the Lego room. The Lego room was a quiet room with a window to the swing set outside. A room that I was almost always alone in, except for when my friend was there. We built and built. We created and destroyed. We mined and crafted for what felt like hours. The kids swinging on the swing set outside would scream and wave at us to come outside or just for attention. But I wouldn't care. I was completely immersed in my craft, my creative outlet. When I inevitably had to go outside and play, I wouldn't stray far away from the sandbox, a more primitive way of building with Legos. Now, don't get me wrong, I would do, just like any kid would, a lot of different things. Never any sports though. I was never a competitive kid. This came with me to primary school and the first couple of grades. But I was also left there without my best friend. Satipo went to another one, a fact that often made me feel pretty lonely in the beginning, but I eventually moved on and found new friends. I never lost him though, and we would, as neighbors, a fact I forgot to mention, play almost every single weekend, sleepovers almost every Saturday. At my school, there was a new, bigger and better Lego room with new Legos. Some of which were better, some worse. There were more of them, but also more distractions from them. It was in primary school I really found the magic in drawing, something that I now in retrospect wish I kept up with all of these years. I drew so much that I would fill entire sketchbooks by the hour. I was more than once told to slow down and not quote-unquote waste so much paper with my childish drawings. But my drawings were not just mindless and boring clutter to fill out the pages, but, in my mind, sprawling and lifelike worlds with immense detail. My imagination was nigh on endless, and I needed an outlet to spew these ideas out. Volcanoes erupting into huge apocalyptic mushroom clouds and stick figures fighting in massive battles, with the primary color always being purple instead of black. I did so because the color black was always being used by someone else or is in otherwise short supply. Purple, however, was basically just a cooler version of black and always available, so it acted as a perfect substitute. I balanced my drawing with the building of Legos. Both had their advantages and disadvantages. Legos were more tangible. I could hold them in my hand and see exactly what it was without taking many liberties. But my imagination ultimately couldn't run completely free because of the limited pieces, especially with the competition hoarding all the good ones. Seriously, some kids would build literal towers with the coolest pieces just to claim them for themselves. Drawing, on the other hand, was truly endless. There was no limit to the mass or structural weaknesses of my imagination, but my 2D drawings were limited to just that, a two-dimensional plane, and my limited skill. But then, after the school had closed for the day, the after-school activities would kick in, including access to the computer. This computer is the beginning of many of my future gaming habits and preferences. I really like Breakout and its many copies because of this computer, and I have an unfathomable love for Tetris because of this very computer. I also played a lot of what was basically Peggle, but less official and more Pirate Bay-like. I also played this bullet hell where you're shooting chickens in space. Yeah, it's weird. It started very innocently. Their mere existence posed a threat to my limited attention. But the more I played, the better I got. The more high scores and competitions started to take form. I would never win. My high scores on the PC were never the highest outside of Tetris, where my extensive Legoing helped me take home the highest score. Today I don't really go for high scores unless the gameplay is good enough. The most recent example of this is Neon White, a game that demands a lot of you in very short, first-person perfection bursts of pure bliss. There was a teacher at school that really got me. He saw that I love to be creative, but also that I love to play video games. I recall that one day he brought the Quidditch Harry Potter sports game for me to try, setting it up on a projector in one of the classrooms. He was just as excited for me to play it and see me enjoy it as he was to play it himself. A feeling that I know is almost just as great. But I digress. On one faithful day, after at the time, really long day of preschool, a kid opened a website that I had never seen before. I know now that this was the website where Mojang hosted a pre-alpha version of Minecraft, but when I saw this, I thought that it was literal magic. I sat down next to the computer next to my friend, playing the seemingly impossible abomination on the screen. I sat in awe at the computer, pleading with him to not turn off the Internet Explorer app after he was done. I waited, taking in the sights as he created childish and mindless creations with weird color schemes. And I waited for what felt like hours. But at last, my kind of friend had to go home. So I sprung out of my seat and sat down at the now vacant PC and played Minecraft for the very first time. This experience can't be understated. It was quite literally life-changing. Never ever did I ever think that Legos could be so endless. I immediately started on my city, the first thing that I wanted to build. It was made out of large squares with dark interiors and small windows, but it was mine. Even this heavenly experience had to end sometime though, just like always. The end came before I was done and before I had satiated my hunger and endless creativity. The voice of my mother saying my name echoed through the mostly emptied of people after school area. I try my absolute best to ignore her, just to play another 5 seconds. But eventually, I can't. So I go home and I forget about it. I come to school the next day and I am once again reminded of that one Lego game with unlimited bricks and weird mouse and keyboard controls. But I don't play it again. I try my best to search for it on my favorite Swedish cool math games equivalents until I give up and the memory of my unfinished city fades into the back of my brain, behind the other things I will eventually find nostalgic. I didn't play Minecraft after that for a pretty long time. Lego and drawing once again took the main stage and acted as my creative outlet. But on one fateful day, a couple of months after the first heavenly euphoric experience I had with the web pre-alpha version of Minecraft, I saw it on the monitor of someone else in the now completely new to me computer room. The short but sweet memory of my unfinished Minecraft city instantly flashed into my brain. That is when I forever implanted the memory of the word Minecraft, often misspelled as Minecraft, into my vocabulary. The web page in front of me, a game called Fly Like a Bird, wherein the player tries to shit on pedestrians from the body of a bird, quickly changed into the Minecraft pre-alpha online demo. Thereafter, you'd often find me playing said game, over and over, late into the afternoons. thus slowly but surely replacing the Lego room that I had spent so much time in. The room where I had built cities and sculpted shapes out of bricks had been replaced by the now virtual versions in the game Minecraft. Not entirely. It was hard to workshop ideas and just put random things together in the Minecraft engine, and it was severely limited in other ways, the most obvious one being the sharp edges of blocks, and the lack of circles. The first time I played Minecraft in my own house was the same version I have been talking about for quite a while now, the pre-release alpha web version. I played that version for a pretty long time, not knowing that the game was actually, well, a game and not just a web demo. But after inheriting a shitty work laptop from my dad, I found YouTube. Well, that's not entirely true. I did know about YouTube, just not the gaming side of it. I've seen an unrealistic amount of funny cat videos. That's when I one day got a short but sweet video about Minecraft popping up on my screen. A video showcasing a component used in computing, except it was built completely in Minecraft. This blew my tiny little pre-alpha creative mode only brain, not because of the genius showcased by the author of said computer component. No. What this video showed me was that Minecraft's limited block palette extended far further than just blocks made out of pure gold, water-sucking sponges, and the various colors of wool. Minecraft had blocks that could combine and converse with each other. Blocks that without the player's input did something. The game was then on, in my mind, more than a simple Lego replacement, more than a static piece of computer art, but a living, breathing game of adding and subtracting, destroying and creating. From this point onwards, I would on a daily basis beg my parents to get the game. They didn't really understand how to get it though, something that I tried to explain to them over and over. They were also against the idea of me sitting inside all day playing Minecraft while staring at Legos or watching a VHS of Star Wars was somehow okay. That's when my older sister's then boyfriend came to the rescue. A pretty cool dude in retrospect. He was a bit of a computer/tech nerd with some insight into Minecraft. So one day he came into my room, in his hand a USB drive, in which a cracked version of Minecraft. My handed down grey and black laptop quickly became a gaming machine. A place to not just look at admittedly pretty funny cat videos, but to play Minecraft as well. The thing with that though, is that I didn't know how to, because Minecraft is, by definition, a survival game. Even though what I've been playing so far had been a cool sculpting simulator in a blocky engine. I instantaneously fired up a single player world. I had no idea what any of the options meant, I had no idea what the seed was, what to press and when, but I did know one thing. How to break and add in this generated world. It was instantly obvious that this game doesn't have unlimited blocks in the inventory to play with. The other apparent thing that stuck out to me was the lack of a border to the world. It seemed as if it spread as far as my little render distance could see. Oh, about that. This version of Minecraft also features a dedicated button to turn up the fog. Also, this collection of memories is probably just that. A collection of twisted, often misinterpreted by me, small snippets of virtual existence. These stories probably don't even collide, taking place over weeks, probably months of playing. I have so far intentionally not said what version I was in fact playing on, but in this following section we will together try to deduce what version of it could have been, using clues from my very scattered memory of the time. First of all, I remembered that the version I played on had pumpkins, and at the time, completely useless item outside of looking kind of pretty. The wiki tells me that pumpkins were added in the Halloween update in 2010, not to be confused with the Pretty Scary update. in 2012. This narrows our search to after the release of the alpha, which is pretty goddamn early, so I guess it really doesn't narrow the search down that much. The version of Minecraft I played also had pressure plates, which were in fact added before, so that didn't really narrow the search down at all. I don't really know why this is even in the script. I probably should have put it before the pumpkins, just to drag this section out, but that's just the nature of these tangents. They're tangents, that by the nature of these sections just kind of have me talking about things I couldn't really fit into the script without breaking the relative flow of it. This doesn't really make sense though, because these sections break the flow even more by being long, indulgent and labyrinthian pieces of ramblings. Let's keep going before I talk myself into a corner. I know for a fact that there was ice in this update of Minecraft. Ice, the block, was added in the Alpha 2. In fact, before the pumpkins. But ice wasn't in the normal world generation until like a half update later, so who cares. I know that the version that I played on had the zombie mob not dropping its now modern counterparts, that mainly being zombie flesh, but instead dropping feathers. An admittedly strange choice of item for the undead monster to drop upon death. This was in the game for longer than you might think. Up until one of the game's most important updates in fact. An update I'll speak about in just a couple of minutes. Beta 1.8. Beta 1.8 added, among a lot of other things, rotten flesh, replacing the feather item dropped when killing a zombie. This means that the update I played was between Alpha 1.20.0, also known as the Halloween update, and Beta 1.8. By my abominable and probably wrong count, that leaves us with about 8 major versions, or about 5 times that if we count the small bug fixes in between updates. So, to answer the questions posed in the title of this section, I could have done a lot of different crack, but the crack I did do was between Alpha 1.20.0 and Beta 1.8. But let's just get back to the actual video. Tangent over. Where was I? Oh yes, my first ever single player world. This leads me to the inventory. A strange place filled with empty slots and the crafting UI. I had no idea what any of this meant, except that the blue-clothed character followed my mouse with its square jaw. I walked around this squarish world without any real goal, not knowing that in this update there is no bigger goal than to just simply survive, which for the first 10 or so hours of the game is more than enough. I hit cows with my bare fists, destroyed dirt and left flying trees everywhere. I found pumpkins and a coal biome, snowed over, and icy water. It was getting dark, and I saw my first hostile mob spawn. I killed a zombie with my bare hands, who dropped what I thought was a knife. Now, bear in mind I didn't know English that well outside of hello, goodbye, and the word elephant or something, so that the knife was called a feather didn't really bother me. Now, to be fair, zombies dropping knives over feathers made a whole lot more sense to me then, and now that I think about it. This is how I died the first time in Minecraft. A game known to me before as a game about building virtual Legos had turned into a hard, often unclear survival game. This became the cycle of my Minecraft world, and most others' first Minecraft worlds I presume, I would explore and build with non-craftable items like dirt, pumpkins and sand during the day, and cower in fear and hide from the hostile mobs, and also probably die during the night. Minecraft became simpler than the game itself in a lot of ways. Not because of the lack of things to do, there was more to do now than any time before it, but because I didn't know how anything worked. I asked my friends at school that knew the game better than me how to craft, and I would draw crafting recipes on a paper to take home. I remember vividly trying to craft a crafting table and just randomly putting 4 woods in the crafting grid just to see something happen. It was magical. One of the recipes I really wanted to make was a simple pickaxe. Something that would let me mine stone with something that wasn't my bare fists. But I failed to realize that sticks aren't the same things as wooden logs. But while experimenting with the crafting UI, I managed to make pressure plates, which I thought were the quote-unquote floor block, to place on top of my already existing dirt floor in the middle of a body of water. I never managed to do more than this in the brief time I spent on this cracked and pirated version of Minecraft. It was a time of wonder and slow but steady improvement, but also the time I stopped playing the PC version of Minecraft for a very long time. Let's then instead move on to the challenge I set for myself on the road to play some of the many updates of Minecraft. I knew I wanted to play the very first web version, a version so crippled by the lack of a survival mode that I just played it for a couple of grueling minutes as I made houses and cleared a sea of water. I determined that just that should more than suffice as me having played the web versions. After that, however, I would go forth into the actual playable, worthwhile versions of the game. The challenge was simple for the first couple of versions, consisting of 1 alpha and 2 beta versions, all to be played in the same world generated in the alpha. Survive was the very first challenge, which takes us to the very first version I will speak about in this section of the video, Alpha 1.5, also known as the Halloween update. There's no good reason for picking this particular alpha other than I did it completely at random. This will change in the future updates that I'll speak on. I guess I got a bit lucky though. This is the update that added the Nether, giving me a great goal for the update, but that will come with time. So let's set the seed and get into the game. My first task would be to get the essentials and build a simple shelter. The one I chose happened to be the least inspired and easiest way to build and make a house that actually looks decent. I made a hole in a wall and put some pretty blocks on the surfaces. But this wouldn't be enough to keep the, at the time, very overpowered mobs in the creepers and skeletons away. I died very frequently because of this, and the fact that I played on the hard difficulty. I played on hard to make it harder, obviously, to make the experience more like the one I had when I played the game for the first time, but also to make my experience just a tad bit more excruciating for me. Before we can craft, we need to do the other thing in the title of the game: mine. It's honestly kind of strange to mine in these premature stages of Minecraft's development, a time before andesite, diorite and granite, a time when the only things you can really look forward to are diamonds and iron. Even if you manage to find some diamonds, you'll probably never find enough to make armor and a diamond hoe. There are no overpowered enchantments to help you get up to 4 diamonds per ore. No, in these updates you seriously have to mine and craft. A fact that slowly but surely got erased from the game with the later updates. A big point to touch on later. I managed to find a couple of diamonds, probably the first diamonds I've ever found in the alpha version in my life. I don't think I need to explain to you why. I couldn't even craft a pickaxe when I was younger. What I did in the alpha was pretty simple. I tried my very best to survive, which is pretty hard in this update. The armor, for example, acts completely differently in this update, deteriorating in usefulness as it gets more and more used, making me not want to use armor, in turn forcing me to go naked and die over and over. It was explicitly clear to me that even if this was intended at the time, it was implemented in a pretty bad and punishing way. There are a couple of features like this that made my first real experience with the alpha a chore at times. The lack of sprinting and then, by proxy, sprint jumping over obstacles often made me a bit bored. But, and yes, there's somehow a but in this sentence, I honestly got used to it. It slowed the pace of the game and made Minecraft relaxing and almost cathartic. I never got completely comfortable in this update. In fact, I often elected to stay inside during the night at the thought of braving the dark with no armor and a stone sword. So instead, I mined. A couple of iron ore there and a stack of cobblestone there, braving the dark caves with torches instead of braving the dark outside with bad armor. I did this almost every night because of the lack of beds in the alpha. During the day, I tried my best to explore and secure the immediate area, making a simple wheat farm and placing torches. I never used a fishing rod in this update, something that I think was added in the alpha. Oh well. This is the update when I realized that I had completely forgotten that the Nether was added in this update. Yet another goal for me to finish. So I did. I ventured down into the earth to find lava, a seemingly insurmountable task, as I did die a number of times on these excursions. Also, obsidian breaks so goddamn slow without any enchantments. So slow that I had to sit and hold for what felt like minutes for a single block. I then went into the Nether, a somehow more dangerous place than outside of it. There's not much to do in this version of the Nether. There's not even quartz ore to mine. This is about the point I stopped playing on this update and looked for another one, because the challenge wasn't to get comfortable. The challenge was to survive, which I barely but definitely did. After Alpha 1.2.5, I went straight into Beta 1.3. I picked this update for a simple reason. It's the update that added beds, something that the game sorely needed for me to enjoy without staying inside my small house every night hiding from the hostile mobs outside. This leads to the challenge I set for myself in this update. Get comfortable. Don't get me wrong though, between the alpha and this version, a couple of things were added, some of which stands among my favorite additions, like a lot of new blocks, squids and repeaters, pistons, both sticky and clean, and new trees. In this update, I just walked around and did menial tasks. For example, I mined a lot. This is a task that in the previous update was a very dangerous task, running around in dark caves with declining armor and a torch bank that quickly runs out. That is why I, for the first time in this video, strip mined. To those who don't know what that is and the YouTube algorithm bot watching this part of the video, don't fret. Strip mining isn't a game for teens to play with a deck of cards in a hotel of the school trip to the Natural Museum of Coal and Industrial Mining Equipment. No, strip mining is a bit less sexy than that. Instead, strip mining means that you mine in strips. This is best done on, and get ready to write a comment, why level 11. This is actually the most used level for mining, as any lava pools you may come across will be on the same block as the floor, so if you somehow fall into the lava, you can swim up, unlike on any level above 11. And the lava will also not flow into your tunnel, like it will on level 10. I made a large corridor with several corridors running in both directions, these tunnels being spaced out every few blocks. With my newly acquired source of a lot of cobblestone, I set out to make my base safe, or at least relatively so, and I made a wall. This would be the last thing I did in this update of Minecraft, well, except walking around and thinking about what actually to do. The next update I updated into is the update I spent the least time in, which is too bad considering it's probably the most update in Minecraft's entire history. So let's look at some of the many additions in the 1.8 version of the beta. First and foremost, the biggest update to the Minecraft metagame is the addition of hunger, experience, and sprinting. First, let's look at sprinting. Looking at the gameplay, I had settled into the slow and steady pace of walking around my base, not really even thinking about the lack of a sprint button after playing the older versions for so long. But the addition of the sprint button is where Minecraft began to become significantly easier, making running away from the many mobs of Minecraft into an actually viable strategy. It makes jumps bigger than a single block possible, and it makes traveling less about looking at the scenery of Minecraft's crudely generated world and more about mapping out a route for the least slowdown. The sprint feature is among the biggest changes in Minecraft, almost always for the better. but it also marks the spot where the game went from really hard to kind of easy in comparison. There was an attempt to make this feature less overpowered. A pretty good one at that, but also an attempt that makes no difference after getting enough food to last for the entire game. That attempted fix was the new hunger system, a system that forces you to eat food to regenerate your hunger, which is used to run, jump, and do stuff like fighting the mobs. This also replaces the health regen system in the previous updates, now healing you automatically when your hunger is high enough, instead of instantly healing you with hearts based on the food. This update also added experience, which in this update did nothing outside of being a cool number seen on the eventual death screen. This is also where I started to really notice the changes in visuals for the first time, mostly in the new lighting engine. We've really come a long way from the frankly ugly graphics and the lack of semi-dynamic lighting system in the web version, or even in the earlier alpha versions. It might seem like an arbitrary and shallow criticism of the first couple of updates, but unlike the later updates, Minecraft's earlier updates lack, and stay with me here, they lack the beauty of Minecraft's world generation, something I will talk about later. With all of this being said, I didn't really play this update that much, because compared to the next one, there is no reason to spend that much time in it. I had to play it because of the plethora of new features that it added. Features that were absolutely some of the most important in its history. Updates that truly shaped its difficulty, but more importantly, it shaped how the game would be played after it. A lot of people would call the official release the best update to Minecraft. Well, probably not the best, but definitely the biggest. Neither of these are remotely true in my opinion. The update before it, the last big update of the beta, and the update I just talked about, beta 1.8, is just the better, more important update that added so many of the game's most game-changing features. But there are reasons why beta 1.8 isn't called the full release. A pretty simple reason too. Minecraft wasn't quote-unquote finished. This leads me to the additions in the 1.0 update, the official release, starting with the biggest of them all, the end. The end is not only a new dimension, but an actual ending to the game, something that Minecraft sorely needed. It's not a decisive ending that locks you out of your world, but something to always strive for. It acts as one of the pillars of a survival world, one of the things you kind of have to do before moving on. So that was my main objective in this update, but I wanted to do it without rushing, which is also why this is the update I spent the most time in, which also makes sense considering this is the full 1.0 release. I'll talk about the other additions if they come up, but without further ado, let's get into it. I started my new Minecraft world in the same way as all the others, by punching a tree, making a crafting table, making a wooden pickaxe, and then starting my journey underground. The many hostile mobs of Minecraft doesn't feel nearly as scary in this update compared to its alpha and beta versions, with the addition of the sprint and fixes to the armor system. I got myself a complete set of iron armor and set out a place to make my base. A lake at the base of a weirdly generated Minecraft mountain. I didn't want to cheap out and make another underground hobbit hole of a base, something I would recommend to anyone that doesn't feel comfortable with making houses above ground, as it's really easy to make it look great, only really having to care about the blocks on the walls, floors, and ceilings. They're also effortlessly easy to expand to fit your growing need for more stuff, like a dedicated chest room or the like. I instead opted to make a wooden house on a lake, harkening back to my first base I remember making, a dirt suite on a lake in the pre-release versions of the beta, with a floor made of pressure plates, stairs that were 1 meter high that forces you to jump up it to get to the second floor, and pumpkins acting as the only real decorations. The thing about this update, but actually more just the goal of beating the Ender Dragon, is that it's actually kind of a long-winded goal that takes some serious time. The main hurdle being the search for the illustrious Ender Pearls, a drop from the kind of rare hostile mob called Enderman. a tall, dark and skinny mob that doesn't like eye contact. What makes it so hard to get ender pearls is the fact that you might need up to 12 ender pearls, while an enderman might not even drop a single one, making the hunt for these pearls into the only real goal in order to get to the end. These pearls only serve a single purpose on their own though, a way to teleport by throwing them into a remote area. The other things needed in order to enter the end are therefore almost trivial in comparison to this, except maybe the search for diamonds, needed to get into the nether through a nether portal, wherein we get blaze rods, used to craft blaze powder that combined with the ender pearl makes the Eye of Ender, the item we place into the ender portal to light it up. But before all of this, before the ender pearls and portals to the end, I decided to make myself comfortable. So I built a house and started grinding for an enchantment table, probably the biggest addition outside of the end. Enchanting is a way to make your armor, weapons and tools better by, for example, making them last longer with the unbreaking set of enchantments, by making pickaxes drop more items in the form of enchantments like Fortune, taking less fall damage by getting the feather falling enchantment, and so on. There are a lot of different enchantments that you can't choose. That's right, what you spend your up to 50 levels on is completely and utterly random, except for the fact that the more levels you spend, the better enchantments you'll get, and the higher tiers of these enchantments you'll get, like Fortune 2 instead of just normal Fortune. But the grind for enchantments is not an easy one, almost requiring an XP farm if you don't want to spend the dark nights of your survival world just running around and killing mobs for their illustrious XP orbs. A slow and dangerous way to do it. This quickly became the main focus for the next few hours of this update, finding and utilizing a spawner to make a simple XP farm. A great, although slow way to farm some safe experience without gambling your life in the process. These XP farms are really simple to make, consisting of a room with a spawner, water taking the mobs to an elevator to then drop them down, not to kill them, although this is an okay way to make a drop-based farm that works without your input to farm bones from a skeleton farm or strings from a spider spawner for example. Not to kill them, but to make their HP low enough you can kill them without using your precious iron sword's durability. With my newfound source of XP, a house to live in and a place to enchant, there was only one thing to be done: mine and craft. So I did just that. I mined and I mined for hours in a straight line. I did so to be able to get some positively awesome gear that in earlier updates couldn't be upgraded outside of changing your iron armor for diamond. But I think I've stalled enough, so it was at this point I went out into the generated terrain in search of a desert, one of the best ways to find endermen, because of the open space. I made a tower into the sky to despawn the hostile mobs and ensure that they spawn on the surface so that I can find them. Hostile mobs only spawn and not despawn in an area around the player, a sphere of 128 blocks in all directions. But I'm not so sure if it's 128 in this specific update or not, but you catch my drift. This is where I spent the next couple of in-game days, but more importantly, nights, looking for the precious ender pearls. I then moved on to search for the ender portal, getting my gear set up for the upcoming boss fight and finally entering the end. You might expect me to go deep into the nuances of this boss fight, but don't get me wrong, I absolutely won't. This boss fight is a cool experience just because it exists, not because of its immaculate gameplay. It starts great. The task is simple, destroying the magical crystals on top of the obsidian pylons that heal the Ender Dragon. This is, in my opinion, the best part of the boss fight. You know what you have to do and the Ender Dragon really doesn't want you to do it. But after destroying all of these end crystals, the boss fight quickly fades in quality, turning into a slow war of attrition. You run around, doing your best to not anger the Enderman while peering into the sky, keeping the Ender Dragon within your sights while he flies around. Every so often he comes down to try and hit you, finally giving you a chance to hit him with your sword. I did this for what felt like 20 minutes, my stack of 64 arrows running out way too soon. But I did it, And it was pretty cool, because I have never beaten the Ender Dragon in this early version, and probably only once or twice on the other versions by myself. I say by myself because I tend to play multiplayer, something I'll speak on later. After all of this, you get a dragon egg and a lot of XP, a fitting end to the long-fought combat encounter with the Ender Dragon, and that's about it for the full release. In a tier list of best updates, Minecraft 1.0 would be in the top tier, maybe not in the number one spot, but definitely in the S tier of updates alongside the next one and the one that gets an entire section of the video. If that isn't a good enough short and sweet review for you, then I don't really know what to say. After defeating the Ender Dragon and jumping into the portal it created, something unexpected happens. The seemingly endless journey of our Minecraft world comes to a complete stop. A decisive end to the sandbox with an open world made out of more than a literal billion blocks. It just doesn't feel right. But that's just it. Everything needs an ending, even if it just takes you right back into the last bed you slept in, which makes you think that the entire game might be a dream. But before you're sent back, a strange thing happens. Minecraft has an ending crawl. A lot of people really don't like this ending poem, and I used to be one of them, but mostly because I had never actually read it. It doesn't fit in with the game at all. The poem reads as a conversation between two godlike figures, talking about the player. At first, they speak in riddles and pseudonyms, that you have reached another level of being, finally seeing the world for what it is. It reads like someone trying to be deep for the sake of being deep, but it quickly turns almost existential.
It has not yet achieved the highest level that it must achieve in the long dream of life, not the short dream of a game.
It goes on to get deeper and deeper into this concept of the dream.
Sometimes it thought itself human on the thin crust of a spinning globe of molten rock. The ball of molten rock circled a ball of blazing gas that was 330,000 times more massive than it. They were so far apart that it took 8 minutes to cross the gap. The light was information from a star, and it could burn your skin from 150 million kilometers away.
This is the dream I would call my life. They call it just another way to see the long dream of life.
Sometimes the player dreamed it was a miner, on the surface of a world that was flat and infinite. The sun was a square of white, the days were short, there was much to do, and death was a temporary inconvenience.
This is what I would call the game. They call it the short dream of the game.
Sometimes the player dreamed it was lost in a story. Sometimes the player dreamed it was other things in other places. Sometimes these dreams were disturbing. Sometimes very beautiful indeed. Sometimes the player woke from one dream into another, then woke from that into a third. Sometimes the player dreamed it watched words on a screen.
We all interpret the game in our own way. We change our minds throughout the endless journey of life, just like we change in our journey with the game.
And the game was over, and the player woke up from the dream, and the player began a new dream, and the player dreamed again, dreamed better, and the player was the universe, and the player was love. You are the player. Wake up.
It's a shame how so many people misinterpret this, or maybe more fairly, how many players don't really value themselves enough to see another meaning in this ending other than as a mess of philosophical crap amounting to get off the game and live your life, or that Minecraft is a waste of time, go touch grass, like in real life. When in actuality, I think it's a beautiful message about the player's importance in the world. They've overcome the many obstacles the game of Minecraft has set before them. You have achieved the highest level of being in the game, but the real world is no different. Each and every one of us lives in a world of endless possibilities. We all have a goal. a purpose in life to live up to. We have now achieved this in the world of Minecraft, so that we can now try to achieve that in the real world. Find the meaning of our lives and try to fulfill it. And that's my reading of the Minecraft ending. It's deep and satisfying. Even if the intended way to read it was that Minecraft is a waste of time, I will never see it that way. Tangent over. Update 1.5, also known as the Redstone update, is when Minecraft's endgame took a vital turn for the better. But before we get into that, let's look at what was added in the updates between this and the official 1.0 release. I jumped ahead quite far when I went to this update, and I don't feel at all bad about it. That's because all the features in between these updates feel insignificant in comparison to the Industrial Revolution of 2013, which is the Redstone update. In 1.1, they added a lot of small updates, like the addition of spawn eggs, completely irrelevant in the survival mode, but a great tool for all the creative mode players. They also added the super flat world type, again great for the creative players. Update 1.2 added the jungle biome, not reason enough to create a new world. It added iron golems, a mob I'll speak on a lot later, and redstone lamps, a cool block for the redstoners at the time. 1.3 most famously added a new type of ore, only really used to trade with villagers and to act as a pretty block for the flexing type. 1.3 also added the Ender Chest, a chest that can be accessed from anywhere, a great addition. It added new wood to match their respective type. Birchwood now looks brighter than the normal oakwood, for example. This extended the building mechanic in the game by a lot, but is still not a good reason enough to update. So I looked at the next update, 1.4, which is probably the biggest update to Minecraft's endgame outside of the next one. I say that because the biggest feature added is a new boss, a boss that I'll speak about in just a second or two. What it also added is the greatest features for players who want to break Minecraft in as many ways possible with the command block. This update also made villagers actually useful outside of trading by spawning iron golems, something that I will once again talk about a lot in like an hour. But there was no reason to play this update in itself, so that's why I went straight to 1.5. In 1.5, Minecraft's endgame was fully complete. Sure, you could add some more stuff to make it better, and they did add and fix stuff in later updates, but in this update, it took a turn and felt like it was done for now. What makes me say all of this is actually because of a single item. A single redstone block that changed everything for the better. The hopper. A grey and boring blob that sucks up items above it. A huge change for the many automated farms already available in the earlier updates. But they are now completely automated, down to the collection of items they may yield. But we'll get into that. The thing is, this update also added quartz. A new ore found in the Nether used for crafting comparators, and the then renowned block, the quartz block. But before I spoil everything, let's get back into the world. My first goal was to get automated. This goal is pretty simple and open to interpretation, but I didn't want to go so deep as to spend days just to make something automated just for the heck of it. This will sound pretty stupid in a future update. So I made a couple of farms. A sugarcane farm to get the mostly useless sugarcane item, but they're easy to make, so what the heck. I also made a semi-automatic wheat/potato/carrot farm for food and another cactus farm, because they're so stupidly simple to make. This update is prominent for its farms, but sadly I didn't really spend a lot of time making them, because that is what the last big part of the video is actually about, so look forward to that. With the many new redstone-centered updates and added features, these farms are now fully or semi-automatic. I made an item elevator to transport items upwards through droppers, a component that you'll see being used a lot more later on in the video. I made a redstone clock to determine when my sugarcane farm was going to get harvested, and so on. These are just a minuscule percentile of what is possible in the 1.5 update, but that's just it. There's actually no end to what is possible with the redstone added, the hopper being only the beginning. With all of this wishy-washy nerdy redstone out of the way, my next goal was simple: kill the wither. In order to do so, you need to collect 3 wither skulls, an ultra rare drop from the all new wither skeleton mob. This is a task not quickly completed. In fact, it will be quite a long task that I, for the sake of brevity, will skip completely through. So there we are, with 3 beheaded skulls of our victims, 4 pieces of soul sand, and a newfound lust for bloodshed. My favorite place to fight the 3-headed bosses is underground, because there he can't use his frankly overpowered ability to fly against me. So I go down into one of my many dugout strip mine tunnels and go ahead and build the statue of soul sand and wither skulls. The problem here then became very obvious. I wasn't ready to fight the wither yet, and there is a reason why fighting the wither underground is a 2-sided coin. There's no place to run. So I died a couple of times. Who cares? I was playing on the hard difficulty, okay? At least I did beat him in the end. So that's the wither. A pretty bad but substantially harder fight compared to its dragon counterpart. It gives you a nether star, an item used for making the endgame item called the beacon. A pile of minerals with the beacon on top of it acts as a huge area of effect buff to one of the few stats like higher jumps, faster running speed, and in my opinion the best and most useful one, faster mining speed, making even stone insta-mineable with a sufficiently upgraded pickaxe. This was also around the time when I started to run out of version specific things I wanted to do, so let's move on. On a tier list of most playable updates, Minecraft 1.8 places in the S tier. This update nicely settles Minecraft into an almost finished state, a state that is more than playable for the foreseeable future and a great foundation for upcoming updates. This is why I spent so much of my time here, in a world that I can confidently call my favorite so far. What you might have noticed is the huge update jump I did to get here. I did some pretty comprehensive research to determine which updates to play, and 1.7 was the obvious first choice, but here we are in 1.8. Why? Well, the update directly after 1.5, the so-called horse update of 1.6, is just that. The horse update. This makes the update almost completely useless outside of adding the horse, except also adding the name tag, which does exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to officially rename mobs, also dooming them to never respawn. So I skipped the horse update. But what about 1.7? The update that is literally called, quote, the update that changed the world, unquote. This is probably the hardest to argue because 1.7 is a pretty huge update, adding a lot of new biomes, among which is the Mesa biome, the new and improved ocean biome that now takes up less space, ultimately making for a worse looking overview maps, but better gameplay for the player. It also added the Mega Taiga, roofed forest, along with its new and overrated wood type called the Dark Oak that looks more like chocolate than wood. It added the Savannah with its even worse wood type with an ugly orange tone that can't be used anywhere without it looking ultra goofy. 1.8 added a couple of things, enough to warrant playing it by itself, but it also acts as a perfect addition to 1.7. Among these are, for example, the new Ocean Monument, an underwater dungeon filled with nasty mobs called Guardians, and a couple of Elder Guardians. The temple itself is made out of a couple of new cool-looking bluish blocks and a new and very good-looking light source called the Sea Lantern. A better version of glowstone in my opinion. This place also has sponges within them, an item that existed long before this update, in that weird web version actually, but didn't have a use in the survival mode until now. This update also added 3 new types of stone underground, which some people hated, including me for a pretty long time, but after seeing what purpose these new blocks serve outside of cluttering your inventory while mining, I can confidently tell you that I'm officially a fan. Last but certainly not least, the slime item. Used to make things like sticky pistons and the lead, now gains an infinitely more important use. Slime blocks were added in this update, making 1.8 the real quote update that changed the world unquote. Because the slime blocks are just that important, making movable things less about using pistons in creative ways and more about using pistons and slime blocks to make literal planes and elevators, huge machines, and simple trampolines. With the pure mass of features added, I had an, in retrospect, pretty simple goal in mind for this update's world. Use the new building blocks and improved visuals to make a cool looking base while not completely failing at everything else. Something I tend to do when I play by myself. Well, I kind of failed at not failing to do anything else, outside of mining a bit here and there, farming some stuff and getting a fair amount of XP. So instead, like usual, which is a flex by the way, I made an awesome looking house. I tend to make buildings exactly like this, but varying the blocks and lengths. It's kind of medieval but also a straightforward style with a lot of greenery and focuses on textures over small details. It's not that I don't want to do small and extremely detailed stuff, either it's blah blah blah, that's enough. I did the basic stuff too. I gathered diamonds and killed endermen. I made an XP farm and enchanted some stuff, but I didn't go so far as to kill the ender dragon, for that is a feat that I have already accomplished in its current state. Instead, I doubled down on making my base into a cool looking place, which is a rhyme on purpose. Totally. That's about it for this update actually. Don't get me wrong, I played this update a lot, but the sentence "I built a house" is more than descriptive enough, so let's move on. Minecraft 1.9 is the biggest update in Minecraft's history in 3 undeniably important sides of Minecraft's core gameplay loop, thus making it, outside of the alpha, beta and 1.0 updates, one of its most major updates overall. It's also, without a doubt, the most controversial, which is very much fair. But why? Why is it so controversial? Let's look at the new, and in my opinion, improved combat. Minecraft's combat has always been simple and will stay simple until the next big combat update, because this one didn't really do enough. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What has changed? Well, it's less brain dead and spammy now, with a meter that recharges after each swing of your sword. Or axe if you want to do more damage, but with a longer timer. You see, that simple, short sentence made Minecraft's combat deeper, adding some downtime in the fighting. But it doesn't stop there. The blocking present in the earlier versions has now been replaced with an actual shield. This shield does basically the same thing, but is placed in your second hand. Yes, that's the second big thing I'm going to talk about in just a bit. The fighting is now more about spacing, timing, and getting more reliable crits over hitting mouse 1 the fastest. I like this change, but a lot of people really don't. The second thing is the addition of a second hand to your main character, Steve or Alex. This changes a lot of parts of the game in many different ways, but let's focus on a couple of simple ones at first. You can now eat food from the left hand without switching to it, making it a quality of life addition to the gameplay loop. You can now hold something like a torch, not having to switch to it anymore while mining. You can now hold some wheat to lure cows while still having a weapon in your main hand. The possibilities are nigh on endless with this new offhand. The last, and in my opinion least defendable addition to the 1.9 updates is the elytra. An item that kind of breaks Minecraft in many ways. It's a change that is so big it inevitably created a huge rift in Minecraft's multiverse. I don't hate the elytra, but I can't say that I actually like what it does to the game as a whole. Let's get to the point. The elytra makes almost every single other way of travel completely useless and outdated. Before 1.9, the minecart had a legitimate use, a reason to exist outside of novelty. After 1.9, I used the Minecraft with a built-in hopper infinitely more, as a moving hopper to pick up items from a mob farm. I don't use the normal minecarts anymore. This is unbelievably sad and shows just how little Mojang knew its own audience at the time, or maybe more accurately, how little it cared for that part of it. The Elytra also made horses, a part of the game I don't really tend to touch on that much, equally useless. Why would I ride around on the particularly bred stallion that I have worked on for days when I can just fly past it at high speed? I don't know how to make the Elytra less useful, or how to balance it at all. Most people wouldn't want to, but I have to say that after once again returning to the beta, the alpha even, that Minecraft's slower pace is a part of Minecraft that I sorely miss in more ways than I could express. But let's talk about what I did this update. It isn't that much, but here we go. I wanted to use the newly changed combat on the bosses of Minecraft, which is the biggest change in these fights outside of the kind of big change to the Ender Dragon fight. The Ender Dragon boss fight is now less of a battle of patience and more of a classic boss fight, docking and weaving in and out of attacks, biding your time, and maximizing damage in the small time frames it gives you. It's ultimately a better boss fight, with more variety and less boredom. After defeating the dragon once again, a new feature rears its head. A new portal that leads to the outskirts of the end. This is the home of the new End Cities, a randomly generated structure with little use in this update outside of being unbelievably overpowered in terms of items in chests, or with the Elytra, that flying thing I talked about just a second ago. These are, as I just said, in End Cities, a tower made out of new blocks of the beige and purple varieties, and a new type of plant, the chorus things. These are admittedly pretty cool, but I have to admit that the use they serve outside of being a block, that's eating the chorus fruit, is nonsensical and wholly out of touch. When you eat these, you teleport to a random location close to you. Sure, why not? We'll be back in the end in the next update, so let's instead move on to the next boss, the Wither. The Wither in 1.9 is a lot harder, because you have to bide your time and play less DPS based and more, well, boring. I died so many times on this boss fight that I had to finish the beast off with simple tools and no armor. A really bad experience, to be completely honest, and after this I had to grind really hard to get back to where I was. But I did it. I made a fish farm, something I'll speak on the 1.12 part of the video. I mined some more diamonds and I farmed a great deal of experience. All to just realize that I kind of completed this update a while ago, so let's move on. But first, a little tangent on the combat. So I've talked a bit about my grievances with this update, but I can't really move on without talking about some of the backlash that Mojang faced when updating the game's combat. So let's take a look at some of the many comments about this, some proposed quote-unquote fixes, and some obviously stupid stuff in retrospect. I don't want to get into the debate of which is actually the better system, because they're so different in what they try to achieve, but I digress. To find this, I simply typed 1.9 combat sucks into my web browser and click some forum and Reddit links. This is some of the stuff I found. Most of these threads I found were called something like, why do people hate the 1.9 combat? This is a fair question, and a question that I can answer pretty quickly. First of all, they don't like that the game is now less about who can click faster and move better, and more about strategy and careful approaches. This is a fair critique. But I have to turn to the survival mode here, because that is what almost everyone is playing. These PvP players seem to forget just how overpowered this combat is against mobs that don't have a single idea how to counter a left-click spamming, jumping, golden apple injecting player. This is the main and single reason why this combat is ultimately better for the game that is Minecraft. Sure, it's worse for the many servers that pride themselves on their loyal fans of mouse-breaking spam clicks. There are valid, like a lot of valid reasons why 1.8 combats is better, and often more skillful, but it can all be chalked up to the simple word different. It's a change in pace, not unlike the change in pace between Super Smash Bros. Melee and Super Smash Bros. Brawl. You can check that one off your bingo board now. One is a better competitive game, while the other is a clear winner in the casual, single-player environment. That doesn't mean there is probably a way to unite these into a single perfect combat system, like Black Ops 2's multiplayer versus its competitive scene, but I don't think we ever could at this point. But fuck it. Here are some stupid fixes people have come up with anyways. One user said to add a chargeable hit, basically adding another type of attack into the game. A heavy attack from Dark Souls. This doesn't fix anything. If you try to use it against a player that runs around spamming, using movement and spacing to not get hit. Why? Oh god, how could you get hit by a slow attack? There are some people saying that they want weapons to have more range. I don't get how that changes literally anything. And that's about it. We have what we have now. It's been years since this update, and the people who don't like this combat is stuck with the old versions, or combat-specific commands and mods. This rant is already long enough, so let's just get into the next update. Tangent over. I knew I had to play one more update after 1.9 before I could move on to 1.12. I knew I couldn't just play 1.10, because that update is really unimportant, so I did the only thing that makes sense. I picked the only other update available, 1.11, which is also the update that I played the least. Not because it sucks, which it kind of does compared to a lot of others, but because it basically added nothing for me to use in my world. I say basically because the update before is somehow even worse. 1.10 added a lot of things, but few of them are really worth speaking on. But I have for the previous updates, so I think I probably should. The so-called Frostburn update added polar bears to make its snowy biomes not feel completely empty. It added the Stray and Husk, a new mob type of skeleton and zombies respectively. These new quote-unquote mobs have some cool new looking skins and unnoticeable effects applied to them, depending on where they spawn. That being in a really hot biome like a desert or a really cold one, like an ice spikes biome. You might have noticed that I don't really like this addition. There are two good reasons that I can come up with right now. Why did you make these mobs into their own thing instead of just making it a reskin? And the other reason is, why didn't you take this opportunity to make these new mobs drop something cool? What if the desert type dropped sand? Then we wouldn't have to make fringe legitimate farms like sand dupers and falling block converters. Let's save this conversation for later and move on to the only cool thing that this update added. The magma block is on the surface a pretty simple block, and when you dive from the 20-meter high jump of the swimming pool, you'll notice that it doesn't go that deep either. The magma block damages you when you stand uncrouched on top of it, making it a perfect block to put on the bottom of your mob farm, to kill the few mobs that defy gravity to survive. This replaces lava, a block that would break their fall. It also replaces their cactus, which destroys items that might fall on top of it. Also, it looks pretty cool, so that's a plus. The two updates that carry 1.11 is the addition of shulker boxes, a movable chest that can be obtained by killing the shulker mob found in the end cities. The second is observers, a block that detects updates in front of it, a block that completes Minecraft's deeper parts of the redstone meta, a block that infinitely expanded this part of the game. This update also added a new randomly generated structure, the Woodland Mansion, a huge haunted house that rarely spawns in dark oak forests. Well, what did I do in this update? I'm sorry to say that all I did in this update was get a couple of shulker boxes and make a simple sugarcane farm using observers. Yeah, I know that this is definitely not enough, but at this point I was feeling pretty burnt out of just doing the same stuff for the sake of doing stuff. A fault that is completely my own, by the way. And that's it. That's all the updates of Minecraft Java Edition that I played and wanted to talk about for just a little while. But here we are instead, over an hour later, still not having even begun to speak about the reason I wanted to make this video in the first place. But I think this part of the video really isn't just in vain. Not at all, believe it or not. It has acted as a great summary of the game's many updates through the years until the 1.11 update. It has been an important glimpse at some of the stuff that I like and don't like. We started in the alpha and betas. A slower, more challenging game. We worked our way through the updates, making countless sugarcane farms for some reason, and tried building everything from hillside holes with a castle wall to oak houses suspended over water and medieval mansions. We killed the mobs, and later on, we killed the bosses of the game, the Wither and the Ender Dragon. Twice, actually. There were some bad times, like fighting the Wither, but also an untold amount of diamonds found and mined. We crafted and we mined. We mined and we crafted. We did what we do when we play Minecraft. Spent way too much time standing around, way too much time looking at the things we have accomplished, while our free time slowly but surely sunk into the bottom of a barrel that is our day. But it was all worth it. We can now revel in the fact that we did just that. It's nothing big honestly, but the wall in the alpha and beta updates isn't made in creative or just randomly generated. That was the player, spending hours making something just because, to satiate our unending lust for creation, the core of the game from the very beginning. Minecraft has gone from a kind of hardcore survival game about mining and placing blocks at a slow but unquestionably satisfying pace, to more of a game about preset goals such as nether stars and ender dragons, a struggle for the best items like mending gear and beacons, and dungeons to explore and conquer like ocean monuments and end cities. Now, don't get me wrong here. Everything from the alpha and beta versions is still left and almost fully intact in the game. It's just that everything that was added and changed since then has made that playstyle almost certainly outdated and just not very optimal. There are so many goals and early game things to be completed first that act as a barrier for a lot of players that think that the game has gotten too complicated nowadays. I don't actually agree with this sentiment to the point of not actually liking the later updates. I know that the game getting more things is a good thing, but I also realize that if Minecraft is going to be updated indefinitely, it will also inevitably break everything that we have ever done. Our simple mob farms will stop working when they inevitably change the skeletons to talk to each other to tactically craft bone pickaxes and kill you in your sleep. This is far, far away, if it ever happens, but something will break, intended or not. These breaks will then break up our community over and over until we all have a favorite update to play on until the end of our days. To me, that update is 1.12.2. It probably won't stay that way. There are things that I dislike about even this update, and I'm sure that the things it focuses on, even if that focus is completely by chance, will be a focus in another update. But before we look into why I think that is, let's instead look at some of the alternate versions of Minecraft, some of which do a couple of things better than the Java, aka PC version of the game, but more importantly, let's look at the really weird stuff that they do worse. With such a monumental game in the making, Minecraft had the rare opportunity to kind of sell out and become a truly huge brand. And with the Microsoft acquisition, there was frankly no reason not to. This leads us to the release of the other versions of Minecraft, namely the now called Legacy console versions on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. These versions were not developed by Mojang. I'm sure they oversaw a lot of it and helped the actual developers, 4J Studios, an independent studio most known for their other ports, like the Banjo-Kazooie port for Xbox 360 and the Elder Scrolls Oblivion for the PlayStation 3. The place I've spent most of my Minecraft time is without question the 1.12.2 update on a PC, or Mac, because we got to borrow those from school. But the second most played is definitely the combined time from the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 version of the game. The sad part about this section of the video is that I don't really remember how it all started, outside of a world that I don't have any footage of. This world is what kickstarted my love for Minecraft, even more so than the PC version of the game. transforming the novelty of placing blocks without a reason in the early pre-release versions into a now important piece of my gaming upcoming in the many worlds on my now broken PlayStation 3 hard drive. As you may have noticed, this section of the video is called Part 2, with the subheading Thriving with Limits, a review of Minecraft's console ports. In this entirely new book of this Minecraft video bible, I will look at Minecraft's two main ports, the now so-called Legacy Edition, which is basically the console edition that came out for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and so on. That was made obsolete and hidden to the public so that the second big port of Minecraft, the Bedrock Edition, could replace it. These are the two versions this part of the video will be all about, focusing a lot on the Legacy Edition because that's the one I've played the most. But let's go back a bit first. And bear with me here, back to where we left off a while ago in my journey to Minecraft 1.12. To summarize what has happened, I started with Lego and drawing at home and in school. I played games on their computers like Chicken Invaders and Tetris, but on one fateful day, I saw the web version of Minecraft, a simple game that slowly but surely replaced my afternoons of Lego and drawing with the breaking and placing of blocks. I then begged my mom and dad to get the game, not knowing there was actually an actual game behind the name Minecraft, past the breaking and placing of blocks in a small, crude world. My sister's then boyfriend installed a cracked version of a beta version of Minecraft on my dad's old work computer, and I never got further into the game than crafting simple and useless stuff like pressure plates. That's where we left off last time. So let's continue the story of my life, which might even have something to do with Minecraft a bit later. Around the time when I got out of the bubble that was Minecraft, me and my sister got a PlayStation 3 as a Christmas present. I think. I say that because we might have had a PlayStation 3 for a year or two before that, but that's beside the point. What isn't beside the point, however, is what games we had for said PlayStation 3, mostly consisting of Guitar Hero games and that forgotten Lego Guitar Hero game that she never played. I say she, because I sucked at Guitar Hero. I couldn't even really play the easiest of difficulties, relying on spamming every button without taking rhythm or even what's on screen into account. We also had a couple of other games. I don't remember in what order we got them, but here we go. The Toy Story 3 tie-in game. A pretty cool spin on the tie-in game genre, complete with hub worlds to explore like a really bad Zelda game and secrets to find. We had a racing game that I forgot the name of that we borrowed from a friend for a while. Also, we had Assassin's Creed 2 that I would play in secret, and the same with Grand Theft Auto 4. Oh shit, ranting coming. There was a quote-unquote summer school at my school that allowed kids to come and eat lunch, play in the yard, or as I like to do, play Wii Sports for like 4 hours in the afternoon after eating some free lunch. What my parents didn't know, and still don't probably, is that I wouldn't go there in the morning until about 10 or 11, using all of those alone hours to play the games I wasn't allowed to play. I would camp on that little island outside of the airport with a sniper and 5 stars on my heads-up display in GTA 4. Rant over. The most important game we had was Little Big Planet 2, however. I remember playing the demo from the PlayStation Store over and over and over, a sentiment most people can relate to. This demo didn't really show what was possible with the game either, only really featuring a single pre-made level from the game's story mode, I think. Okay, let me slow down a little bit, for you people who don't understand what I'm talking about at all. So, what is Little Big Planet? Little Big Planet, LBP if you may, is a 2.5D game with a simple yet deep level editor. This level editor is what the entire story mode is made out of, or at least a lot of it. Not unlike Minecraft, almost everything is possible in this game. The dev team behind LBP recently made a pretty similar game called Dreams, a PlayStation exclusive just like their Little Big Planet titles. The level editor present in Little Big Planet then once again replaced my Lego chest. It made creating and then playing the things I created a thing. I couldn't just make and imagine things happening. They were happening right in front of me with my eyes completely open. I would show these levels to my friends and we would play them together. It was kind of amazing. Around this time there was a retro/used game store pretty close to my house, so I would often go there and browse things to play, buying dirt cheap licensed games like DreamWorks Superstar Carts. That's with a Z, by the way. This was also around the time when I got to play some games for an older audience, upping the limit to PEGI 16, which is in the European standard. Even though I had been playing both Assassin's Creed and GTA 4 for like a year at this point. This was a pretty big win in my books, making titles like Battlefield 3, a game I've replayed at least 5 times, available because of their relatively low PEGI rating. With the quote violence barrier unquote broken down, getting to play 18+ rated games was just a year or so away. So I played some more Little Big Planet, accidentally bought all the DLC with my dad's credit card, and made some cool and a lot of stupid levels. But on one fateful day, I got a new game. 2 new games actually. Call of Duty Black Ops and Call of Duty Black Ops 2. When I got these 2 games, my world got turned upside down. I didn't play much of the first one for a long time, but Black Ops 2, or BO2, became my life for a long time afterward. I've made a really long video on that game a pretty long time ago now, a video that I recommend you to watch, even though the first hour of it kind of sucks ass. I promise it gets better after I talk about the last campaign mission. But I digress. At the time, I didn't really have any way to talk to any of my friends remotely, outside of a game. The PlayStation 3 didn't have a voice chat feature outside of its games, which quickly became the only place I would speak to my then, and some now, friends. It was a terrible way to communicate with them, being interrupted by the other players in the game calling us names or telling us what they did to our mothers. But it was still a way to speak while playing a game, which was crazy enough in itself. We laughed and screamed at each other in custom game free-for-all lobbies with snipers only on Nuketown. We would try hard in Search and Destroy, and we talk shit while looking at the post-game scoreboard. It was a great time in my life, but also kind of empty of creativity. Something that I kind of have to do to not become crazy. So, what did I do? Well, I continued building Legos. But now with a noticeably Call of Duty-fied tone. What I'm trying to say is that I made gun replicas, often straight out of the game. In the game, BO2 that is, I made emblems, the little picture that shows up when you get killed by the emblem holder. This is like the deepest of lore, but I loved spending like a full hour making these emblems with their weird quirks and limited freedom. I remember using one of the preset pieces, which is the way you make emblems by the way, as a gradient by zooming it into the max, which, because of its low resolution, had very baked-in anti-aliasing. These emblems were often pretty awful, displaying a simple clan tag or a stupid-looking picture like a perk from the Zombies mode, or if you were a really cool dude, a childish drawing of various human organs and body parts. Call of Duty fed me for a long time, but then, on one fateful day, Minecraft, the game that I made dirt houses in with noisy floors, then popped up on my radar again, sitting there on a store shelf for the discounted price. So I picked it up. This simple gesture, this in retrospect hugely important catalyst for my youth was to be sparked here, in a now defunct store around the area where I used to live just a while ago. I can't really recall what played out on my first couple of worlds on the PlayStation 3 outside of 2 specific ones, only one of which I have managed to save and record for this video. That one I have converted into a PS4 world, where the footage was captured. But before that world there was a couple, actually a lot of others. I'm not happy to tell you that I've most certainly forgotten about these. These worlds filled with countless happy and a few angry and probably a pair of sad memories. Friends I used to have. Moments captured in crudely written signs. Creeper potholes dug out by deadly explosions and floating trees littering an otherwise perfectly fine looking forest. Let's not get bogged down in the forgotten. Instead, let's revel in the not so forgotten memories, starting with the first real world I can remember. I didn't know how Minecraft worked for a long time. You may recall the dirt house with wooden pressure plate flooring from the very first part of this tale of my Minecraft saga. It was here, on the crudely made and unintuitive controls of the PlayStation 3, that I finally got Minecraft. I could shape it into what I wanted with enough time and effort, with the very basic knowledge from the tutorial. My first base was made in a well, with signs stopping the water from flowing into my underground base. This world is where I found my first diamonds, by digging an, in my eyes, huge underground room with stone pickaxes. I used the famous X-ray glitch to find caves and underground dungeons that I didn't know how to harness quite yet. I used all of my mined stone to make a tower that stretched into the sky in a nearby desert, but these stone blocks were never enough. A problem I often ran into was underestimating the cost of making something huge. The stack of up to 64 blocks felt like a pretty big number. That's over halfway to 100. But when you realize that a platform of 10 by 10 blocks is almost 2 of these stacks, you start to understand the numbers a bit more. I think a lot of us can relate to this even today. "Yeah, a stack or two should cover it," is a phrase often heard within the walls of my cranium. These early days actually taught me a lot outside of the game. Things like simple math. The stacks of 64 could be divided into 4 chunks of 16, that in turn could be turned into 2 pieces of 8. 2 stacks are 128, and there are 54 slots in a doll chest, which in turn fits 3,456 stacked items. I could do this in retrospect pretty useless math really quickly. I know that a hopper can transport 9,000 items per hour, so a farm producing more than that needs more hoppers. Things like that. It also undoubtedly helped me flourish in my English class. I remember this one time when I was the only one who knew what the words fence gate meant, but I digress. In the desert with the tower, I also made a big wall to surround it. This is where I also made my first farm outside of crops. A simple obsidian farm. A farm that doesn't work anymore. It was built on a bug, but it wasn't overpowered to me at the time, and probably really isn't today either. It takes redstone to power, not a contraption, but rather just a redstone dust. This farm made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. It kind of does now. It has something to do with it breaking and somehow registering as a normal lava source, which likely isn't the right answer either. I was really particular about the things I made in the world because at the time it was filled with friends that played with me. This is a thing I kind of hate about myself. But I have some pretty huge ambitions and a clear image of the things I want to make. I'm sure I'm going to talk about this a bit later, but it was pretty important to know for the story I have lined up. There was this kid in my Minecraft world. I don't remember his gamertag, but he constantly asked me for things to do. So one day I said to him, "Dig a hole and get some cobblestone for the wall." And so he did. He dug a huge hole with stone and iron pickaxes and delivered this stone to the wall effort. That's the story. I promise it sounded a whole lot cooler in my mind, but all I can remember is that he would constantly remind me of this in every single circumstance he could. That's probably why I even remember it now. "Remember when I got all that cobblestone for you?" It's barely a story actually, but it nicely paints the simple, abstract painting that is the early days of Minecraft for you. And for me, including it in this video immortalizes a memory that would undoubtedly be forgotten otherwise. I had a partner in crime for these earlier worlds, someone I speak to pretty frequently. I think I've mentioned him before in the Black Ops 2 video, the illustrious Awesome Casper 789. Of course, there were others, Valekul and Ramin100 come to mind, but I don't think they were there for as long as Awesome Casper was. So thank you, all of you, for sticking around and giving me all of these amazing memories, and anticlimactic stories such as the one I told you a minute ago. There are some worse memories here too. I distinctly remember a guy vaguely named something like the capital city of Egypt, something Cairo. A pretty popular dude to play with at the time, in my circles. He had a creative super flat world with some pretty cool builds. A pirate ship stands out in my mind as one of the cooler ones. One day, he joined my frankly elementary in comparison survival world, with my childish wall made out of cobblestone. my tower reaching into the sky and a under a well base. This dude, someone that I and a lot of others respected because of its aforementioned creative world, somehow found my only diamonds, probably 5 or 10 at most, and logged off, never to return. I was so sad, so mad, that I never played in that world ever again after that, and probably returned to Call of Duty for a while. The version of Minecraft seen on consoles is distinctly different from the versions on PCs at the time. There are a couple of reasons for this. The biggest and most noticeable is the fact that they aren't built on the same foundation. The PlayStation version is completely and utterly separate from the PC version in this way, but it was almost a necessity. It was made from the ground up to be played with a controller, and on a screen further away. This is why the crafting system looked so different from the PC version of the game, being less about knowing the crafting recipes' layout and more about how to navigate its futuristic user interface quickly. The user interface as a whole has been quote-unquote consoleized, being bigger and more readable on a TV screen. Let's look at some of the major differences from a casual player by looking at its tutorial, a great start for those who don't know Minecraft at all. The first thing I did when I booted up the PlayStation 3 emulator called RPCS3, which works perfectly with Minecraft PlayStation 3 edition to the point of it feeling like a full-blown port. Also, if any FBI agents are watching this thinking I pirated the game, rest assured that I do own the game on both PS3 and PS4, so settle down. Where was I? The first thing I did when I started this version of Minecraft was to look at the old tutorial world, a pretty cool and unique feature of the first console versions. The tutorial is unlike many I've played up until today. It's an actual good part of the game that stands outside of the actual game. So repeat playthroughs, or more than one world in this case, is not bogged down by a lengthy tutorial. If we compare it to something such as an integrated tutorial, often seen in games like Call of Duty, Minecraft doesn't get in our way outside of pop-ups telling you simple stuff, a feature you can easily turn off in the settings. The world itself has changed a couple of times during the lifespan of the version, each one's adding some of the new features seen in their accompanied updates. These updates are called TU, followed by a number, unlike Java's 1 point followed by a number. TU standing for title updates. We start off in a small, rundown house, surrounded by cliffs flanking on our sides. A set of stairs leads up to a castle made out of sandstone, the game's title suspended in the air above it. In this micro version of a valley, we learn the very basics of Minecraft, mining and crafting, get resources and make a shelter, how to eat, how to use a furnace, and how to navigate the admittedly weirdly overcomplicated console-adapted UI. After this, we are set free to explore the castle. A showcase of several of the key features that we use on a daily basis is led out here. A simple redstone contraption, enchanting items, farming, and breeding of animals. But this is all very obvious. A bit too obvious actually. This tutorial feels very unnatural. It's all laid out for you so you can stroll around it like a captivated 50-year-old aunt in an art museum's nudist exhibition. It's the fact that you can then, with the help and items from the tutorial, go exploring. Maybe even play on this tutorial world like any other. Except, this world also brings with it some unfair expectations. There are a lot of man-made structures here that might seem generated. A boat, a house in a valley, and a tower on a hill. These all contain a piece of a secret challenge every world like this one has. Collect the 12 music discs. It's a fun challenge to go around the now many pre-made worlds on the legacy console versions. These worlds range from the Fallout universe to Mass Effect, with huge builds and a lot of secrets and Easter eggs to find. I often found myself exploring one of these, mostly for inspiration and because I was bored of the almost exhausting gameplay of Minecraft. One of the main differences between Minecraft for the PC, the now called Java version, and the console version, now called the legacy console version, isn't the fact that you can't hold anything you want in your offhand. No, To me, the main difference is that 4J Studios, Microsoft and Mojang made the game more accessible, both in a literal way. It's on more platforms, making it accessible to more people, but also in the way that it's just simpler. Not because it's actually easier, outside of the crafting. You don't have to know the exact recipes of everything. Actually, now that I think about it, the recipe book was added in the Java edition too, so... Oh, where was I? Oh yeah. Not because it's actually easier, but because the learning I had to do in the earlier versions, the versions I spoke about an hour ago, has been streamlined with the addition of a tutorial and pop-ups that teach the very basics. This tutorial doesn't get in the way, and it doesn't spoil the fun of discovering the game for yourself. It doesn't really hold your hand outside of the tutorial world, something a lot of games should take note of. This section is unlike the ones before it. In this section, I will speak about myself. That was a joke, by the way. This entire video is actually just me indulgently speaking about myself in the brightest, nerdiest light possible to sometimes speak about the game Minecraft in between that. But seriously, in this section I will probably nerd out and go on pretty lengthy tangents looking at some of the many Minecraft worlds on my dying PlayStation 4's hard drive, to see what is possible on the console versions of Minecraft, but also to immortalize the many memories that they hold within them. One thing you'll instantly notice is the fact that I'm playing the Bedrock version of the game. That's because the game updated itself and forced me to. I didn't want to play the Bedrock edition while touring this world, but again, there's literally nothing I can do now that it's already updated itself. Also, my PlayStation 3 is dead. Its hard drive is completely busted and its disk drive even worse. I could only make it to an endlessly looping loading screen, which is actually really sad. There are some memories on there that I spoke about earlier, but some of them will now have been forgotten forever. Let's look at the first world that I still have left from the PlayStation 3 days, keeping in mind that it has been butchered by the forced updates of the Bedrock edition and several layers of corruption. This world was created basically the same day as the 1.7 update came out for the PlayStation 3, sometime in 2015 I'm pretty sure, about 8 years ago as of making this video. This update was where I returned to Minecraft after my pretty lengthy hiatus and starting taking the game a lot more seriously. Finally learning the ins and outs of stuff like the basics of redstone, the many spawning mechanics, and how to make automatic farms. This was also when I began to look up tutorials and started watching let's plays of other Minecraft content, often made for console players only. I made my first villager breeder here, which outside of the context of an avid Minecrafter sounds really peculiar. I moved to bigger things, and keep in mind I probably played on this single world for at least a year. I made a base that rests upon a pretty impressive quarry, a base in which a gold farm rests, a farm I almost made entirely by myself. Sure, it sucked and acted more as a map farm because of its location, which was within the spawn, making all new players spawn into my farm and dropping a map upon their death. My base now looks eerily empty, probably because it was stripped of its chests, an artifact of the forced updates of the Bedrock edition. You can see this in a lot of places, one of which is the previous world borders, because Minecraft on the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 was actually limited before. This can also be seen, well, I guess not be seen, in the lake a bit outside of my house, behind the forgotten and abandoned project that sits next to it. In this lake, I spent days upon days draining an ocean monument, making a farm that barely worked and farming countless guardian drops. These drops were highly regarded, most of all the illustrious sea lanterns, the, at the time, all-time best lighting block, closely followed by glowstone or the redstone lamp, depending on your preference. But this farm was also removed because of the forced Bedrock update, corrupting the chunks almost perfectly to replace my days of work with a coral reef. It sits there almost to criticize me, the player I am today. Sure, we took your hard work and awesome farm away, but look, you have a new cool biome in its place to explore. Aren't you happy? The corrupted chunks say to me in a snarky voice. A house of a friend sits on the border of this chunk error, cut in half by the digital failure of the mechanical hard drive combined with the force updates. I moved one last time, this time into a new big project, something you'll hear from me a lot in the coming couple of minutes. I wanted to make a majestic castle on a hill, so I copied the world and went into that copy with creative mode enabled. This instantly labels it as a world with cheats enabled. I don't like playing with cheats enabled, that's why I copied it. It makes it all too easy to quote-unquote just cheat this once. But what happened then, I couldn't have predicted. I lost my original world. It probably got corrupted or just somehow deleted, so my then perfect world was instantly ruined and I stopped playing on it forever. Until today, when I enter it once again. Chunks are destroyed and item frames laying on the ground because of version differences. But this wasn't a problem at the time. These chunks of land were destroyed pretty recently. Probably when my PlayStation updated itself a while ago while I was playing something else or just watching Netflix. I can't look at these worlds any other way. You can't update backwards on a console like the PlayStation, dooming worlds like this one to a life as a half-broken mess of lag, flawed item frames, and slow loading times. The next world we'll take a look at is the world I created after the previous one became labeled as a cheating world. A world where I had pretty obvious idea what I wanted to make, but I obviously never got very far. I made walls and a couple of houses starting my planned city, a central circular tower, or a base of one, a simple sorting system that was never finished, and a pretty cool looking mine that I never used. I don't remember why I stopped playing on this world, nor do I really care. So let's move on to the next one. A world most Minecrafters can relate to. A creative world that is completely flat, titled something testing or whatever. Or in my case, creative testing. This world was mostly here to test simple redstone contraptions, like this dabbing machine, or a couple of simple farms for things such as sugarcane and pumpkins. There are a couple of simple redstone doors that are broken by the forced Bedrock update and a few disco lights scattered around. What made this world special are the few bigger creative builds I made. A cool looking indoor fountain, and my village in a very deep valley. This is a pretty cool showcase of my primary building style, mainly the roofs I make. It's nothing original, so I won't even try to explain them, and the logs on the corners make my houses a bit top heavy, to be honest. I might seem perfect from the way I talk about myself in these videos I keep making, but I probably suck to play with. Let's talk about why I, in fact, probably suck. I often find myself thinking up a grand plan for my Minecraft worlds, a huge goal that I will never reach but always work towards. This often leaves little space for things most people like to do in their worlds, more casual things. Instead, you'll often find me saying, "No, you can't build there," or "Don't place any doors this close to an iron farm." I don't mean any harm, I really don't. I just have a grand plan in my head stopping you from playing the way you want to. A plan that I know isn't feasible and probably doesn't really need to be obsessed over to the point of constricting others. I have a fear of missing out, something I very often speak about. This naturally extends to the future. Not to the point of looking up guides for games I haven't played, but for Minecraft, there are a couple of things that I will probably never do in a quote-unquote forever save. A save that I will never leave. I will probably never build a base in the spawn chunks, the 12 by 12 or so chunks that surround the spawn point. If you don't know what a chunk is, by the way, which is completely fair, they are 16 by 16 squares that make up the map, reaching from build height to the void. They can be seen in game by clicking F3 plus G. Rant over. Back to the actual rant. Where was I? Right. I would never build anything laggy in the spawn chunks that aren't meant to be there, because, and a spoiler to those who don't know this, the spawn chunks are always loaded. This makes the spawn chunks very valuable, so no one but me, the stupid and overprotective server owner, can use it for anything. This is my problem. I get in the way and I make people quit. I make Minecraft into something that isn't fun for people who don't play like me. I've kind of taken this to heart as of late, but probably for the wrong reasons, being the fact that I don't really care as much anymore. Tangent over. I somehow managed to convert some of my worlds on the PlayStation 3 to the PC and back to the PlayStation 3 back in the day. With these magnificent powers, I got some, at the time, really cool blocks and unusable dev features like command blocks. I used these to try and become the best place to play Java-specific game modes like factions in the very limited engine the Legacy Console Edition runs on. To do this, I had to learn the basics of a few of the programs made for the game specifically, programs such as NBT Explorer and MC Edit and World Painter. I'm not going to speak about these more than this little shoutout, but you should know that Minecraft has spawned a lot of projects like this. Some just kind of alter the game. I'll speak about a couple of those later on, but also some standalone programs that simplify and at the same time widen the horizon of Minecraft's map making and much more. These worlds I made weren't always made with the help of programs like these. Sometimes I tried my best to make them completely out of the mechanics that can be found in the creative menu, something that makes them pretty boring to talk about, but also kind of more legitimate, if that's something that bothers you. I didn't really play these custom modes all that much, because of just that. It didn't really feel legit. I have always gotten stuck in this question in all of my days of playing Minecraft, mostly because I've been burned before. It's all too easy to start cheating if the world you're playing on is already labeled that way. Just like the survival world I talked about a couple of minutes ago. One of these worlds was my best attempt at a prison escape. A map I spent a lot of time on. To me, it wasn't really about making something that will be played. I knew that there were so many more and better ways to play the game mode, none of which really existed on the PlayStation. But, nevertheless, after spending so many hours in survival worlds making farms to collect materials, it was really nice to just forget about hunger and health bars and make something for someone else to enjoy. The last save we'll look at is the most important outside of the first one I made. That world I never converted to the PlayStation 4 and has therefore been lost forever to the corruption gods of the PlayStation in the deepest depths of my cardboard box of game consoles. No. This world is the one I played on the most, and subsequently did the coolest shit on. It's also the world that I decided to take on a new outlook on the game. This new perspective was that of automation, an aspect of the game I will dive pretty deep into in the next big section of the video. This world is called Amazonia, and yes, that is a really stupid name combining Utopia and my in-game name, but it nicely summarizes the entire world into a single world. It's my Utopia. But people will try to belittle that by saying that there are several other people that played in this world. To those people, I remind them that almost everything is better when you can share it with a friend. There are some exceptions to this, unspeakable things mostly, but playing Minecraft is certainly not one of them. Actually, let's turn that into a small mini-rant. I have not played a lot of Minecraft single player. Well, that's only really half true. I often find myself playing Minecraft on my own, but there are rarely times when I sit alone in an offline world. I play on servers, or at least on joinable console worlds. That's that. Back to Amazonia. Or Amazonia, well, I don't care. We will take a small look into console Minecraft and its limits. First of all, let's take a short and nostalgic look at the spawn, a floating island made out of iron blocks, quartz and packed ice. This is where a new player would spawn in, and more often than not, ask for creative mode, something that we didn't use. We were just that stacked in terms of iron. There are some truly cringeworthy rules written up on the walls of this place. A favorite of mine is number 7, which reads, "Straight up racism in your builds is not allowed." First of all, there should be a little line between straight and up, and the word R should be replaced by the word is. It's just such an innocent sign, clearing up something so obvious. On the opposite side, we see the mission statement of Animazania, a quote we've all heard sometime in our life. Go big or go home. Along with some tips for the new players joining. Our end goal is to have farms for everything farmable. The middle sign says, the main force outside of having fun with friends driving the server forwards. Let's move on to the main town/marketplace area, where most people decided to hole up and make their homes. This place is something I'm rather proud of. I made some cool buildings here, an iron shop, and a huge cactus factory comes to mind. The yacht I built for the legendary Mare 197 is another one of my favorites. An unfinished airport stands out. My base is just next door, covered by a mountain. Right now it stands as a castle in ruin, but I had some huge plans for this place. There's a room with item frames on the walls, a museum of sorts. The feather I thought was a knife, the cobblestone my friend so often reminded me of, and a fully enchanted diamond hoe with a fitting name. My chest room stands in even worse shape, however. The version differences destroying most of my item frames, labeling the contents of their chests. It was a base I thoroughly enjoyed, but it really wasn't finished or even close to. Let's now instead take a look at the reason why I think this world was a truly special moment in my Minecraft career. The farms. This world has 3 farms that I think are pretty cool, but none of them work today. There's the iron farm. A total beast that allowed the server to build stuff out of iron blocks after my PlayStation 4 stayed on, wasting electricity night after night. The pumpkin farm that lags my game after opening a chest because of the sheer volume of it, and the guardian farm that gave us the precious sea lanterns and an ungodly amount of XP. These farms don't work anymore. Instead, standing as husks of their former glory, without yield or use, outside of looking cool in a technical and bombastically huge kind of way. There are 3 things that made Amazonia into something really cool. Number 1. The farms. I made some crazy farms here, some of which we'll take a look at in the next part of the video. Number 2. The big bases. They're scattered around a bit, but we saw them throughout. And last but not least, we have 3. The community that brought it all together. This is a huge, throbbing cliché, but Amazonia wasn't really a world. Well, actually, that's exactly what it was. But it was also more than that. It was a community of immature friends that played Minecraft, Call of Duty, Fortnite, and other games on the PlayStation 4. With all that said, however, Amazonia is thoroughly dead. I only really interact with 3 of the members on a semi-frequent basis, 2 of which I sometimes retweet on Twitter, while another one plays CS with me every few days, the guy I talked about a while ago. My playthrough of Minecraft for consoles isn't nearly as big of a section as the last big part of the video when I talked about it for literally an hour plus, about the many updates of Minecraft and my recent retreading of them. This section is more here to take the major version differences and tutorial worlds teaching to mind and apply it to the game. I don't do it very well or even correctly, but let's take a quick look at Minecraft's PlayStation 3 version from the perspective of a 2023 playthrough. I want to warn you first, I didn't play this version nearly enough, or even close to as much as I played any of the others earlier in the video. I'm just going to use this opportunity as a bit of a review. A second look at a lot of the things I've already talked about from the perspective of someone that used to love this version. First of all, let's all agree that this version is just worse in every way possible. I won't sugarcoat that. It runs really badly. It's inherently less creative because of its many limitations, and the overall experience is just more limited compared to its predecessor, the Java edition. But there are some things that make it special outside of its many faults. It feels more relaxed. Now, that might come down to the simple fact that you generally play this version on a bigger screen and with a controller. Or maybe because you don't have to have a wiki page on the other screen to figure out the crafting recipes when you're starting out. But it does feel more relaxed. I decided to make my base, just like way back when, in a well, I did some mining and I died a couple of times not being used to the controls. One thing that made Minecraft Legacy Edition different from the less chained down versions of the game was the addition of minigames, an often forgotten piece of history that has been lost to the forced Bedrock update. These minigames were in actuality kind of awful, toned down versions of themselves with stupid limitations and borderline outdated mechanics. But the fact that they existed at all added a lot to the already kind of crowded interface of the Legacy console editions. They had a worse version of the Hunger Games game mode, the predecessor to the Battle Royale. This version is really small, somehow smaller than I remembered. These game modes were underdeveloped and unpopular, the reason they aren't talked about ever anymore. Another thing that makes the Legacy console version different is the in-game purchases. I won't defend these. I don't like them. They took advantage of the fact that console versions aren't as easily modifiable and charge us money to do so. It's a very Bethesda way to do it. But compared to the Bedrock edition, something I'll speak on next, it doesn't take your money and convert it into some unrecognizable and hard to calculate version of itself to confuse buyers into buying more than they want. The Legacy console version gives you a price and gives you exactly what it tells you. It's not good, but it's debatably better than not having any skins, map packs and resource packs. I knew there would come a point in my playthrough of Minecraft's many updates where I felt bored, and there would be moments when I would feel lost in the mess of updates leading to this one. But here I am once again. I was home. It all came so naturally to me. The controls, the interface, and the stupidly small world I spawned into. It's a world that really shouldn't have been this good. But Minecraft is just truly timeless, but also formless. Minecraft has a home. That would be the PC Java version. But Minecraft doesn't need to be on the Java version for it to be Minecraft. It's formless, timeless, and never the same. Because when I played every single version, there were a couple of things that brought them together. The gameplay, mining, crafting, building and destroying. The graphics, the dirt block, the grass block and cobblestone will always look the way that they do in this era for me. But what might somehow bring all of these versions together is the music. I'm saving my big talk about the music for later, but let's just say that when Sweden by C418 jumps in, any blocky game with mining and crafting could be Minecraft if you close your eyes. I have not said many pleasant words about the so-called Bedrock version of Minecraft in this video so far. I did so not out of spite. Well, actually that's a lie, because if I'm being sincere, I don't like this version. That might be because of the fact that it feels like and is a port of a mobile game, or that it replaced the flawed but ultimately engrossingly deep Legacy console version. But I think it's even more deep-rooted than that. There are many positive things to say about this version. Its performance may be its most extraordinary feat, but I think that there is one thing that simply made this version too different for me, even as someone that played the Legacy console version of the game. So let's start with that. What's the difference? Let's start with a huge positive, the performance. While playing the Java edition of Minecraft, you have to have a pretty beefy computer that can handle a lot of CPU related tasks. Minecraft also takes quite a lot of RAM for it to run smoothly. It's not nearly as important as the CPU, but it takes a pretty big toll, especially when loading and creating chunks. Bedrock doesn't have this problem at all, as it's made for underpowered machines like phones and tablets. This gives the Bedrock edition a huge edge over Java edition in this category, sporting what feels close to 10 times the frames while playing on the same settings. But this unfortunately gives way to other, unforgivably bad downsides of the Bedrock edition. Bedrock isn't run on the Java programming language. Instead, it's made in C++. A newer and probably better engine, but also an engine that doesn't translate very well to Java and its quirks. These quirks include basic redstone mechanics like bud switches and one-tick redstone that now just doesn't work. These aren't small mechanics, they are huge in their importance, as if Bedrock Edition didn't include the comparator and replaced it with something else. A huge piece of the redstone pie was taken off the windowsill that was the Java edition. I mean, even Jeb doors, a door named after a literal developer of the game, doesn't exist in this version. This is obviously the biggest reason why I don't like Bedrock Edition, but as someone that has played it a fair bit, there are other things I dislike. First of all, the UI. The UI of the Bedrock Edition feels distinctly mobile and overly slow. It's laggy and unresponsive, and lacks the features of Java. It somehow feels like the aforementioned C++ infrastructure instantly gets replaced by the coding language of a touch-sensitive McDonald's self-serve kiosk. There's no spectator mode, a feature I use on creative and old survival worlds all the time to quickly move around in and out of things I've made. The gameplay also feels like a port of the mobile version, which makes sense considering it basically is. Also, and let's not forget, the mine coins. What the actual fuck, Microsoft? These other things I mentioned before, the redstone, the UI and the mobile feel of it all, is somewhat reprimandable. It's forgettable and can be forgiven, but you know what I will never forgive you for? Selling kids a virtual currency that gives them stuff we Java players get for completely free. And they do it in that scummy way where they don't give you the option to buy exactly how many minecoins you want, or at least enough to get a skin with just one small purchase. They give you 1020 minecoins and not 1000. They give you 320 instead of 300, and so on. These are kids you're marketing towards, and you cannot rebuttal that. It's just a fact. The things you get from these are clickbaity, off-brand versions of the Java originals for extraordinary prices and with fewer features. This is a scam. Don't be me. Don't see a character from a game and think, I need that skin. Don't be the person that settles for a worse version of a popular Java edition mod. You'll just be as disappointed as me. Because there you are, a worse product running on a worse version after giving Microsoft of all companies more money. It's just the creation club from Fallout and Elder Scrolls all over again. Except this time they decided to cater to actual children. This all compounds into something distinctly different. Something that if I were to play it enough, might start to find a place beside the Java and legacy console versions in my heart, but instead, it sits there. A broken, more streamlined mobile port of a sellout version of a game that should never change its basics. Especially if it takes this much for it all to just fall flat. But hey, at least we have RTX in this version. In this section, I will ask two simple theoretical questions that leads to some horrifying truths. I ask these questions to answer another pretty simple one. How do you expand the Minecraft multiverse outside of the main game? Or to be completely transparent, how do we sell out? Question 1. What is Minecraft without mining and crafting? Minecraft is a game entirely constructed out of the idea of freedom, through its many systems that govern its blocky world. Two of the most important of these are mining and the subsequent crafting of your newly acquired materials. What if someone, as a twisted case study, removed both of these, or at least deflated them down into name drops, quicktime events and gimmicks? If that sounds both tone-deaf and unintuitive, I give to you Minecraft Story Mode. Telltale has made some truly amazing things with their very limited way of creating games. The Walking Dead immediately comes to mind as the first obvious pick, a game that shook a lot of its players when it ended its first season. This game took a world and created a story that was truly magnificent, a timeless piece of zombie fiction. They tried and mostly succeeded with this in other worlds. The Batman series they did was nice, the Wolf Among Us is supposedly really good, and the Borderlands one has some great reviews. What all of these have in common is that their worlds have a backstory of some kind, and lore to base it all on. Minecraft, however, is almost as empty when it comes to lore as Geometry Dash. Sure, there's probably a reason why we jump forward to the music, someone will find a meaning to it all. But playing a game about that, rather than playing the actual game, is just backwards. especially when we're talking about such a noob-friendly game as Minecraft. Just like any other Telltale game, Minecraft Story Mode is based on the illustrious proposition of choice. This is a feature that a lot of games say they have, and most of them are lying in some way or another. Telltale took this personally and rectified the issue by making a game about that, and only that. When I played the first hour or so of Minecraft Story Mode, I felt the illusion fade. The Masters of Choice had lost their only real gimmick. Instead, I was spamming buttons to chop down trees and fight zombies. I was walking around talking to NPCs with cheap one-liners and exploring barren locations for the way forward. This game feels empty. Like a corporate building during 2020 with COVID raging on worse than ever. It feels like a cash grab made to woo children into the pipeline that is Telltale. Except, what are these children supposed to play after this one? Telltale's Game of Thrones, maybe? I'm not even going to try to tell you what this game is about. It almost feels like the first season, the only part of the game I played, was either just a setup for a bigger threat than the big wither thing, or the halfway point of the story. Also, this happens. If this game was this funny all the time, I would have played it once a year to clear my palate. There is not a single valid reason outside of because it's bad to play Minecraft Story Mode. And even that shallow, stupid reason kind of falls flat. Because this game is not just bad, it's bad in a boring, generic, child-catering way. The logical follow-up question is then, question number 2. What if Minecraft was a Diablo 3 total conversion mod? It's a pretty good question, we've all thought of it, right? I'm kidding, obviously, but the existence of Minecraft Dungeons is one filled with questions. A game that feels a bit unreal considering the source material. It focuses on 2 of the main pillars that make up Minecraft, combat and exploration. But this ultimately leaves the biggest pillar, the same pillar that Minecraft Story Mode also seems to have forgotten about: freedom. The game is linear. There's some exploration within levels that reward players with loot and the like, but there's no chance you'll find a cool looking floating island or a cool base location to log the coordinates of. Taking a quick look at dungeons reveals a simple truth. It looks like Minecraft at a glance, a severely modded and photoshopped version of it, rendered in Cinema 4D with a lot of post-processing, but the Telltale signs are all there. Blocks and creepers. That's Minecraft, right? No. This is a dungeon crawler with some admittedly nice combat and fun co-op gameplay. A game I actually enjoyed for the little time I spent in it. There are a lot of fun and, to me, original weapons and equipment to find and use. About that. There's a lot of loot here, another thing I enjoyed. It also isn't that easy. This game is not targeted to the same audience that Minecraft Story Mode is. I had to really try with all of my friends when fighting a couple of bosses. But it's also a game held back by its source material. Or maybe the lack of it. So don't play this imposter of a game. At least not right away, because why would you mod something before playing the original? Why put salt on your steak before tasting it? Why play this when Diablo 3 exists? What these 2 questions actually answered is that Minecraft is not what it is because of creepers or diamond swords. Not because of cobblestone and dirt. Not even because of blocks. Minecraft is what it is because of the freedom of it all. And the perfect and peaceful combination of all of it, making a soup tasting of combat, exploration, dirt and diamonds, subwoofer lullaby and hunger bars, mining and crafting. If even one of these ingredients is lost or altered in any significant manner, we are not playing Minecraft anymore. Not really. Sure, it can look and smell a lot like Minecraft, dirt and cobblestone surrounding us, but it won't feel like Minecraft. Because Minecraft is not creepers and dirt, but a complex net of systems that work in a perfect union. That's why Minecraft is timeless. And to once again hammer this point down to the flatness of a piece of paper, let's take a look at the 1.12 update, and why I still play it. First of all, 1.12.2 isn't the best single update to the end of time. I can't defend that without being disingenuous. But what I will do in this pretty lengthy section is defend the notion that Minecraft 1.12 is in fact the best single update to play on indefinitely as of right now. I say that as someone that hasn't really given the newer updates a real chance. Maybe because I know that they will ultimately always catch up with the perfection that is 1.12 in my mind. Or maybe it's the complete opposite of that. Because even if 1.12 ever gets overtaken, it'll always have a place within my small, smooth and slightly pale brain. The so-called World of Color update brings with it nothing more outside of blocks for builders and a refreshing focus on colors. That's why this update by itself doesn't really excite anyone uninitiated. But one thing that might make this update even worse to some is the fact that the wait between 1.11 and 1.12 was pretty long. It was actually a boring time in the game for a lot of fans, but in this section of the video I will try my absolute best to persuade you into the camp of 1.12 lovers. Not because of the abundance of new features, but because of the amplitude of the imaginative earthquake it set in motion. To give you a little taste, I give to you 3 introductions to 3 amazing things made possible in this update. Number 1. The iron farms. Take a look at this. This produces enough iron to make a house, nay, a mansion, nay, a whole city out of iron. It's also something that, after this very update, changed drastically for the worse. Number 2. The TNT quarries. These are huge in this update. Completely automatic TNT dupers that have been optimized to perfection, making things like this possible in 100% vanilla Minecraft without mining 10 million stone. 3. The theoretical made reality. You might know this as the challenge map called Skyblock. What you might not know is that this is made completely in vanilla survival. Also, Bedrock is obtainable now. So that's something. This part of the video is technical, but made to be digested by someone who has only really watched the first 2 parts of this video or played a little bit of Minecraft. But before we take a look at these 3 things and more like it, let's take a quick look at how I made my way here in the first place. I ended my console journey on the PlayStation 4 in my first year of high school. I call it that because there isn't a good way to translate the Swedish grade system to English. But the best translation I've found is that I was in grade 10 or so. But it continues for longer and is a separate thing, and who cares. I stopped playing the legacy console version of the game because our school gave each and every student a Mac. A pretty powerful piece of hardware for me at the time, both fueling programs like Adobe Premiere a lot better than my own laptop, that totally sucked by the way, and games like CSGO ran at around 100 frames on low settings and a 4:3 resolution. With this newly acquired hardware and new friends in my new class with the same or oftentimes better hardware, I slowly but surely got back into Minecraft for the PC, or more accurately, Minecraft for the Mac. At this time 1.12 was the latest update, and at the time Minecraft had a lot of innovation within said update. Maybe because 1.11 is essentially the same thing with less building blocks. This led the community to a bit of a content drought, something that might seem bad at first, but it ultimately breeds innovation. A lot of people will leave, but those who stay either have to replay and redo over and over, or they have to start being a bit more imaginative. They have to condense and improve instead of using new features and fixing their now broken creations. The world you see on screen now is one of these worlds I started. On a seed I picked because of 2 simple reasons. The spawn was an island and there was a so-called quad witch hut close to the spawn. It's a seed I used again just a couple of weeks after the creation of this server, when a couple of other people wanted to join and be in the lineup from the very start of the server. This is the second most impressive world I've ever taken a big part in. There's another world that I show off a bit later. This was the world me and my friends played on daily for almost a full semester in school, or maybe even closer to half a year. With my newfound technical outlook on the game, acquired in the console version, I played Minecraft unlike I've ever done before. I optimized. Not to the extent of many others, but to an extent I personally had not surpassed before. I had a plan. I had goals to achieve outside of killing the Ender Dragon. I've had plans and goals like it before, but never to this extent. Never to quite this caliber. I had a world that tries to do this on the PlayStation 4, a world that I spoke about a bit earlier, but it doesn't really come close to this one. That PlayStation world was my own, but this one was a co-op project, which is truly the way to play Minecraft. Minecraft 1.12 is the last update I was completely and utterly invested into, with my YouTube recommendations quickly turning into a primordial soup of Ilmango, Nembon, and YouTubers with less than 1000 subs talking about their super efficient farms 5 years after the release of the update they work in. It's the last update I remember looking at changelogs for, the last update I looked at specific update videos, it's the last update I downloaded a texture pack for. That's why I called Minecraft 1.12 my last Minecraft update. Not because I will never play anything after it. That is basically impossible, and I've already broken said promise, but because it's the last update I truly tried playing. The last update I went all in to truly understand, down to the foundations. Some games have so many rules that govern their gameplay and the open world down to the smallest details. For a very superficial and kind of stupid example, let's look at chess. Chess has pieces that can move within their own limit and the limits of the game. There are no quote-unquote glitches that allow you to bunny hop to the other side of the map in 3 strafes with the pawn to get the speedrun world record. Minecraft instead has a couple of ground rules and system-wide features that keep us on track and grounds us in the reality of Minecraft. Let's look at some of these, what they mean for the world, and ultimately how we can exploit them in the future, starting with some fundamentals on the couple of the many systems we will talk about later. First of all, let's take a look at how things spawn. This is a pretty open question, but we'll focus on the very basics. Some things will be wrong, some things will be outdated in the newer updates, and some other things I will tell you will make almost no sense out of context. But all that is beside the point. The hostile mobs can spawn in a sphere around the player, reaching 128 blocks in all directions. Anything that's outside of that will immediately despawn. There are some exceptions to this rule. A mob cannot spawn within a sphere of 24 blocks of the player, and mobs further away than 32 blocks will not move and can randomly despawn. There are exceptions to both of these rules. These mobs can't spawn where the light level is over 7 or on blocks that aren't solid. Stuff like glass, the lower part of a half slab, and water. There are some exceptions to this. Naturally. So I've already taught you what a chunk is in an earlier part of the video, but let me reiterate. Chunks are what Minecraft's worlds are built out of. 16 by 16 block squares, reaching from the deepest of voids to the sky limit. But here's something new this time around. Something called sub-chunks. These are instead based on Minecraft's Y level, that's up and down, combined with the normal chunks, making small cubes of 16 by 16 by 16 blocks. We use these sub-chunks mainly for optimizing farms by using as few of these sub-chunks as possible. Let's make that just a little more digestible. The spawning algorithm. The thing that governs the spawning of the game that is Minecraft starts from the lowest block in the chunk and goes upward looking for a place to spawn a mob. This means that basically any mob-based farm becomes a lot faster by just putting it as close to the bottom of the world as possible, with nothing above it. This also makes it more lag-friendly, helping the engine by removing most of its workload looking for spawning spaces. With all that being said, This isn't an uncompromised solution, it has some pretty big downsides. For example, the fact you have to remove a lot of blocks, a lot of times taking more time than the actual build of the farm you're making. Or the fact you have to spawn-proof the other blocks around the farm, because you can't just stand in the sky above it anymore, where you didn't have to worry about other mobs spawning. But that's enough about mob spawning, for now. Instead, let's take a look at something completely different. Let's look at chunks in a new light, how they load and unload. Chunk loading is a huge and very important subset of mechanics that govern a lot of other mechanics in the game, and to be frank, I barely understand a single % of it. Here are the basic principles and how to exploit them. There are two types of chunks when we speak about loading them: lazy chunks and entity processing chunks. Entity processing chunks are rather simple to understand. They process entities. These are things like items, mobs, and certain redstone components like hoppers, minecarts, and so on. These are the chunks we want, outside of a few uses. Hence, the chunk loading. Lazy chunks are a bit harder to make tangible. It's a chunk on the border of being loaded, let's say. It will not process any entities and will only handle simple block updates and things like terrain population. These chunks will not process entities. To get your lazy chunk to turn into an entity processing one, we simply load the chunks around it. A grid of 5x5 chunks will have a single entity processing chunk in the middle of it. This is the simple premise of chunk loading. There are a few things that help us load chunks, outside of the spawn chunks or with the use of a player, those two being the easiest chunk loaders. Hoppers are the most popular in this specific update, as when they're placed in such a way that they're facing into an adjacent chunk, they will load it. With this simple principle, we can set up a grid of 5x5 chunks loaded with hoppers. But don't fret. This machine unloads very regularly, so we need a more permanent way to load it. By making a line of chunk loaders from the spawn chunks, we can use their power of being constantly loaded to load our 5x5 grid indefinitely. This is a spawn chunk based chunk loader, a piece of tech I often use in my worlds, most often when loading the end portal for use with sand dupers, a farm I'm going to quickly cover in a couple of minutes. In this section, I will try my best to retell the first week or so of a hypothetical 1.12 multiplayer survival world. Note that I say multiplayer. I'll speak about this update from a multiplayer's perspective from now on, mostly because I only really play this update with others, but also because I prefer playing Minecraft on a server for two main reasons outside of playing with friends. First of all, you get better performance, letting the server do a lot of the heavy lifting. And second, you can run your farms even if you're offline, like I talked about in the last part of the video, about chunk loading. But I digress. My 1.12 worlds almost always start off as a joke. Let's start a new Minecraft server! Or as a plea, not having played the game for several months. This is the cycle of my Minecraft journey ultimately. Burning out only to come back with new inspiration and energy a couple of months of CSGO later. First comes the seed, an important part of almost all servers, but even more so for servers specializing in being a bit more technical. I always want to have an island spawn, mostly because it will all be removed anyway, so that the spawn chunks won't load any passive mobs like cows or horses, restricting their spawns outside of it. An island spawn is also a fun challenge for multiplayer, the few trees resting on its surface being the only way to leave using a boat, quickly becoming a hub for transporting oneself around the sea surrounding it. I also want a nice mushroom island within a couple of thousand blocks of the spawn point, partially because it acts as a cheat code to a starter base with hostile mobs unable to spawn within it, but mostly because a passive mob farm within it yields only the drops of a cow. The best fully automatic farmable food source in 1.12, I think. Last but definitely not least, actually is the most important for me personally, is the existence of a so-called quad witch hut. preferably within a couple of thousand blocks from spawn. This is a very rare occurrence, especially with all the other factors factoring in, but after much consideration, a server host can be picked. This is probably the hardest part, figuring out how much RAM you need or whatever. The thing is, it's less about the RAM and more about the processor. I won't delve into it, but you should know that a bad server with a lot of RAM won't perform better than a good server with only a little bit of RAM. That's the basic principle of it. So here we are. The day of starting a new server. The island spawn, the mushroom island and the COD witch hut. The players join, the ones that will, like me, stay for a couple of months, and the ones that will play until their diamond armor is fully maxed out, then moving on to their next save. These types of players are in these few opening days on the same level. The more casual types are often a level above their more hardcore technical counterparts. This opening week will consist of a lot of manual labor of the fun kind. Looking for diamonds, making basic farms for food, and sometimes a simple iron farm placed in the spawn chunks for some passive iron. The goal of this week is very simple for me. Get through the early and mid game of a Minecraft world and move straight to the almost endless and in my opinion greatest part of 1.12, the end game. But what do these chunks of the game entail? Well, the early game is what I call everything done until you no longer feel unsafe going out in the night. To me personally, that means getting full iron armor or so, and getting a good source of food, a simple space to store stuff, and maybe some diamonds to make an enchantment table and a diamond pickaxe for a nether portal. Also, you're going to want to make an AFK fishing farm. This is what I call the early game. To some, the best part of the game. But to me, a veteran of Minecraft's early game, it's kind of boring a lot of the time. Moving on to the mid game, where the Ender Dragon, further but still simple automation, and the perfection of your gear are the main targets. This is, depending on both luck and experience, a pretty long section of your Minecraft journey. Not really comparable to the endgame though, because it's endless, but still a big chunk of the time spent. I kind of like this section of gameplay, making a simple XP farm of a skeleton spawner, enchanting over and over to get both Fortune 3 on your pickaxe and Protection 4 on all your armor, and that fish farm that I mentioned a sentence ago. This leads us to the endgame, which starts right around the time when we have obtained a beacon, fully enchanted gear, and a reliable source of XP like an Enderman farm and a simple mob farm to fuel rockets you'll be using to fly around your world. Before we move on to the endgame, I want to talk just a bit about the fish farms I keep on mentioning. Minecraft has a fishing mechanic. And using this mechanic, exploiting how easy it is to fish, we can do so automatically with the help of a player holding down the right mouse button. This is the basics of a fish farm, the simplest and most overpowered farm except a raid farm, as seen in a later update that I won't talk about. What makes fish farms so overpowered is the fact that when fishing, you have a small chance of getting a rare drop like a bow or a clownfish, but also enchanted books. This makes making other farms using complex mechanics like villager breeders and trading halls completely obsolete in the short term. This farm sucks. I don't like its inclusion one bit, making other parts of the game useless and overcomplicated outside of it. Now, onto another tangent. Salt or sugar, vanilla or white chocolate. Who knows what's what until you taste it. What you think is okay will be egregious to others. Here are some liberties and altercations that I use when I play Minecraft 1.12.2 specifically, and what I don't. First of all, I always use Optifine when possible, a client-side mod that basically just gives you free frames with no downsides, or at least no downsides I can find client-side. It also gives you a zoom button, a feature that can be done to a point in vanilla by lowering your field of view, but the zoom is a very fun addition that at times feels like an obvious feature. I also tend to use the server-side altercation called Carpet mod, a mod that changes a couple of things but still keeps the game completely vanilla to anyone that joins the game. This means that you don't have to download any mods to your client to play it. But unlike similar server-side mods like Spigot, it doesn't fuck with any of the vanilla features that I really value, like villagers and many automatic farms. Carpet mod is an ongoing project by now Mojang employee Nembon, a mod that tries and very often succeeds in feeling completely vanilla while still adding and altering features therein. After using it for such a long time, using its many features, I can say that playing 1.12 without it just feels a bit off. My favorite addition that Carpet adds to a server are the several debugging tools that make optimizing farms a breeze. Take the mob caps for example. Carpet adds the options to see mob caps when looking at the scoreboard, an otherwise unused feature on most servers, now with added use. The other, in retrospect less vanilla feature, is the ability to turn objects with a cactus. This might seem completely random, but when working with things like observers, sticky pistons and similar, this tool is a complete lifesaver. Carpet also tries to optimize the engine in several ways. I won't delve into that, but rest assured it helps your server in more ways than the aforementioned cactus. The last mod I'll speak on is Schematica, the least vanilla mod that I feel comfortable using. Schematica, or its predecessor Lightmatica, are two mods used when copying builds from one world to another. Be that a huge farm with intricate redstone or a nice statue of your skin to put outside of your base. It's a mod with a lot of uses. Another good one being filling a large space with blocks using the printer mechanic. The printer does exactly what you might think. It prints out the blocks from within your inventory. This is a feature that I might call just a bit too cheaty. But when the other option is to place 20,000 sand blocks by hand, breaking your right click slowly but surely, this option doesn't seem that bad in comparison. I wouldn't use this feature for more precise things though, as it can make mistakes when placing blocks facing specific directions. But while making something like this, it surely just helps speed things up a bit. Tangent over. Here we are, the summit of Minecraft's endgame. We are overpowered in terms of armor, equipment, and resources. But this is when the next phase of Minecraft actually begins. But unlike the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it doesn't suck from here on out. We've essentially completed Minecraft, but just like how we don't just die after getting laid, we need a new goal in life. One that can sustain us for the foreseeable future. In my case, this often means something huge that I can still complete without getting overwhelmed. My first choice is often an iron farm and slime farm, two essential farms for future projects. Slime farms are simple. Dig a hole in a slime chunk, make some spawning floors and a collection system. But iron farms, however, they're a whole different slice of pie. Iron farms use the villager system to produce iron and for some reason, some roses too. This feature is meant to act as a way for bigger villagers, naturally generated villages that is, to defend themselves. As when a village reaches a certain size, a golem will spawn to fend off any and all zombie threats. This is the mechanic we players will exploit, by carefully stacking multiple villages on top of each other in such a way to not reset them. Back in the day, resets were a big deal. You'd have to place hundreds of then non-stacking doors for hours. Now, well, back in 1.12, you can make this a fully automatic procedure, giving you a huge build to make in your world, and probably one of the most important ones, as iron is used for a lot of different things, and is a kind of cool looking block. I've made at least 5 different stacking iron farms, with my biggest one being 512 stacked villages, each one producing around 40 to 50 iron an hour, giving me a crazy total of well over 20,000 iron ingots to supply my huge projects. This farm is definitely overkill for my personal use. It'll probably be overkill for most servers, but for some, this isn't enough. That's when even crazier, somehow bigger iron farms come in, and when the technical part of Minecraft really shows itself. This is Project FE5 by Minecrafter TDL, a 2049 village iron pumping beast of nature. It produces close to 80,000 iron ingots every single hour completely without input. This farm acts as the end to an era, and it knows it. Created well after the release of updates after 1.12, this iron farm stands as a monument of just some of what was possible in 1.12, a bygone era of huge machinery and technical prowess, but hopelessly outdated in every update after its conception. It makes for a cool decoration, I guess, the same way we keep our old dirt huts after we make our first real home. This is one of the main pillars to my huge and rambly argument to why 1.12 was the peak of not just technical Minecraft overall, but to Minecraft's endgame, filled with impossibly huge projects. A couple of minutes ago, I hastily threw out the words sand and duper in a combined word. Sand dupers are a huge deal in Minecraft, as sand, along with a couple of other blocks, aren't automatically farmable. But unlike diamonds, another item we can't make a farm for, sand is a huge part of any world. You need it to make glass, which in turn acts as a part of a lot of other crafting recipes. In the beginning hour of the video, there was a moment wherein I talked about the addition of the husk and stray mobs. I mentioned them because they could have been the answer to these quote-unquote farms we need to make to get a lot of sand automatically. Instead of making a sand duper, which works by tricking the game into giving us sand we shouldn't have, we could have made mob farms for sand. But what I've ultimately come to terms with is that sand dupers are kind of awesome in their own right. They act as a fun project for the endgame, combining both chunk loading and mass storage. And if you remember that concrete, another falling block, can also be produced in these dupers, you can make entire factories within the walls of your server. These complicated machines look awesome in movement and produce a copious amount of blocks for use in your huge builds. All in all, I think that sand duping is just that. Duping or duplicating. It's an exploit that we all accept as a feature. An exploit that admittedly looks pretty cool, but also an exploit that could have been avoided. In my world, I tend to have at least one giant hole. This giant hole often serves a purpose, like this one, holding a half-built quad witch hut farm. To a bystander without any real experience with Minecraft's many connecting mechanics, this hole might look like something made in a couple of minutes. Maybe they'll note the uneven walls or unfinished looking floor. But what they don't know is that this is a huge project, bigger than most people will ever think of achieving by hand. And luckily I haven't. These holes were made with flying TNT machines, giant slime and redstone contraptions with varying complexity. From fully automatic pickup systems collecting every block to my comparably archaic semi-automatic slimestone TNT quarries. These are huge projects. Projects I've spent at least 500 hours on combined, but even so, I feel like a total and utter noob at their construction. But just as a wise man once said, with the power of schematica, late nights and a good podcast, literally anything is possible. But there is an actual reason for these giant holes to exist. We house our farms within them. Why? Well, it's simple actually. to make sure that nothing else can spawn within our range because everything else is air, bedrock, or another non-spawnable block. They also act as a great way to lower the lag of an area, because even though Minecraft is over 10 years old, it still hasn't figured out that things behind other things, like caves, don't need to be loaded in the same way if you're not there to see them. Now, don't get me wrong, Minecraft does this to a point, but the fact that hoppers still lag the game to the extent they do is just beyond crazy. If you thought the things that I made in the last part of the video were crazy, wait until I tell you that there are actual uses for the dragon egg in your Minecraft world. Yes, the egg does have a use beyond being a cool looking decoration, obtained after slaying the dragon. This use case is a weird one, that being breaking the unbreakable block of Minecraft, Bedrock. This isn't a purposely coded into the game feature. No, this is a very specific glitch that uses the properties of the dragon egg, specifically the fact that it has such a weirdly slow fall speed. Yes, just like sand it falls, but for some odd reason it does so very slowly. Odd. With the power of lazy chunks, the bordered chunks of already loaded chunks, we can trick the game into thinking the egg fell through the bedrock, as seen here on the roof of the Nether. We use this specific trick mostly because it's easy to use for small stuff like this, to clear out maybe 20 or so bedrock at most. It's a very time-consuming process. But, just like most things, some German guy made it automated, or at least semi-automated with machines like this. This is a Y0 bedrock remover. What makes this machine so cool, outside of its amazingly realized redstone and slimestone, is the fact that it can remove the last layer of bedrock, not usually removed in the same way the other bedrock is removed. It also does this without dragon eggs, which are a chore to clean up. This machine instead uses headless pistons, yet another innovation in the game, a piston without its accompanying head, to break bedrock somehow. I'm not even going to attempt to explain this phenomenon, it's just that boring and complicated, but believe me when I say this, it's both boring and complicated, so at least you're not missing out on that much. Removing bedrock isn't enough for you? Well, how about we look at some stuff that is somehow even crazier than that. This looks impossible, even to someone who has played the game for as much as I have. This is completely and utterly vanilla. There is absolutely no trickery here whatsoever. Sure, it probably wasn't intended to be used and abused this way, but what I'm trying to say is that this is what can be made within Minecraft's rules without breaking any of them. No mods or additions. Now, I'll do my best to explain this without butchering it completely, but I urge you to watch the 3-part series made by one of Minecraft's geniuses, XCOM6000, a seriously awesome character in the 1.12 and overall technical community. What he explains in this video is in principle quite simple, cracking the code that is random number generation or RNG, the part of the game that generates randomness. This is obviously not intended, but by loading certain chunks under certain circumstances, you can reset the RNG, meaning you'll know the outcome. In a casino, this would essentially mean you know the spins on the slot machine. Knowing just when the next jackpot will come is a huge advantage, and if we keep resetting the machine that gets a jackpot on the first try every time it resets, we've got a slot machine that always awards a jackpot. This is what it means to manipulate random number generation, to know the outcome of something previously random. In this farm, they use it to spawn a pack of witches that would have otherwise be spawned here randomly, but by resetting the spawning algorithm and the RNG that drives it, this farm now spawns witches like a waterfall. This random number generation can be used for other things like controlling the weather or maximizing the number of diamonds you get from fortune. Yes, that's right, you can, outside of edge cases like lag spikes, engineer a way to get 4 diamonds out of every single diamond ore with your fortune enchanted pickaxe. The same player that uploaded the video about the random number generation based witch farm, XCOM6000, has also made this video, simply titled Faster Than Light. A video showcasing the barrier of the speed of light being broken within Minecraft, at least on a theoretical and crazy complicated level. By exploding TNT at a precise place and time, we can fire our Ender Pearl, an item with maybe a couple of dozen blocks of reach if you're a total pro, millions of blocks away. And with the Nether being the way it is, we can take this already huge number and multiply it by 8. This is totally nuts in itself, but thinking about the fact that we haven't even managed this in the real world on the theoretical level makes it even more of a feat. But there's one thing even I hate to admit is taking it maybe just a bit too far. Bedrock is an item that is unobtainable in survival Minecraft. Mojang will tell you that. But just like everything I've spoken about, there came a German to break the rules of the game. Obtaining Bedrock, a feat not bestowed upon many players, is completely possible in the 1.12 update. Now, this is obviously a glitch and an exploit, obviously. But the fact that the game has been so figured out, so studied and obsessed over to make something like this even remotely possible is crazy. This was possible with something called update suppression and stuff. I won't even try to explain the basics of this, but let me be clear when I say this. This is straight up rocket science, and the players behind this research should probably be hired by SpaceX and NASA at the same time to make teleportation and time travel. This is just what this game has come to. Such innovation, such creative personalities working their asses off just to satiate their endless curiosity for a game about mining and crafting, and the way they do it is nothing less than amazing. There are many things that I've talked about in this video that most people, including me, call glitches and exploits. But not unlike, say, bunny hopping in CSGO, oh my god, or wave dashing in Super Smash Bros. Melee, these exploits are now just a part of the game, acting as mechanics, filling the hole of something Mojang didn't think of, or fixing something that they shouldn't have changed. But first, a mechanic that they did fix before 1.12 that I think they shouldn't have. Piston translocation. Pistons before 1.11 and after some other update that I don't want to go research had a special quality that deepened their potential. When a piston was powered into certain entities, most notably mobs and the player, it would pull said mob or player. This had some seriously massive potential, making elevators or even highways, but Mojang thought otherwise. A choice most people at the time really didn't like, including me, but we've all forgotten it by now. So instead, let's take a look at one of these exploits turned features I use all the time in my Minecraft worlds, one that I would put on the very fringe of legitimacy. Sand dupers. That's that contraption that duplicates sand. That's an obvious exploit, but one that even Mojang has deemed a necessary evil. I say that because this has been in the game for a long time, and unlike piston translocation, something that isn't game-breaking, it still hasn't been fixed. I say necessary because it is. There's no way to farm sand in the game. Mojang has had the opportunity to add a farmable source of sand more than once. I spoke about this just a couple of minutes ago, so you probably catch my drift. The other, somehow even less legitimate exploit I use all the time is TNT duping. What makes this one different is that we're not duping the TNT item, we're instead duplicating an activated TNT, used to make huge quarries and farms that require a block breaker of some kind. This can be circumvented with withers and in later updates by using normal TNT, so that's good, but in 1.12 that TNT change hasn't come into play yet, Also, withers are very glitchy and can escape their cages, making those very scary to make on a server with lag of any kind. There are more exploits like this that I use, breaking Bedrock with dragon eggs for example, but let's move on for now and get back into the actual video. Tangent over. At this point in the video, you will either hate me, in which case, thanks for watching the entire video before commenting my entire home address, the name of my dog, and the file name of my secret stash of illegal Nintendo fan-made mods you're planning to send to their lawyers, or you'll tolerate me. In which case, let me try to prove to you why Minecraft is headed into a bad place, or at least into a place where it really shouldn't strive to be, so that you too may come to hate me. What I immediately notice when going through these many new Minecraft updates is that Minecraft is creating huge divides in its community. It will always do this with every update, but the way in which they make these updates speak upon their lack of a foothold in the community outside of their very casual audience, an audience we shouldn't always strive to satisfy. 1.13 is on almost all possible levels a good update, at least from the outside looking in. It fixes a lot of the issues with water, how it looks and how it works, but it also totally destroys several features from the 1.12 update. The 1.14 update, known as the Village and Pillage update, also destroyed a big part of 1.12, namely its villages and iron farms. But the casuals were satisfied for a little bit with the new pillagers and raids, at the same time creating a farm so overpowered it replaced at least 4 of the 1.12 farms. 1.15 adds bees, so that's nice. This update is underwhelming for casuals and a great one for the technical players, adding a new farmable mob, yet another divide in the community. 1.16 adds a new ore, an ore that serves no purpose outside of being the only reason to enter the Nether in its update, the Nether update. I like this update. Kind of. I dislike the new netherite ore. It's better than diamond while looking like a tier below iron. But the casuals, oh the casuals love this new update, with an amazing array of new structures and biomes to explore and more loot to acquire. 1.17 and 1.18 are the biggest updates that come to mind when speaking about recent updates. The Caves and Cliffs update, altering both caves and mountains, mostly for the better, but I have to say that the new deep slate block palette is quickly overtaking stone bricks as the most overused blocks in the game. Almost everybody's basically in love with this update, but I can't help but to see the obvious fanfare here. The additions feel wrong. I don't want deep slate ore, I want normal ore. I like the new caves, but they make perimeters and mob proofing an even worse experience. But then again, I think it might be a net good for the community, with a higher build limit, new blocks and cooler looking caves. All of these updates combine and coagulate into a mass of things. Things that act as a great checklist for players that play Minecraft as any other game. But as someone that loves Minecraft more than that, as someone that plays an older update almost out of necessity, this pile of things doesn't appeal to me. I don't hate them. I've played all of these updates for tens upon hundreds or maybe even thousands of hours, but none of them, in my drawn out and rambly opinion, come close to the perfection and sheer amount of innovation that Minecraft 1.12 harbors within its Java-coded walls. Someday they will, if Minecraft keeps getting updates at the rate it's getting them now. Ultimately, the Minecraft community will find a way to recover and recoup, as we always do. 1.9, for example, sent half of us away to a land without elytra and end cities, instead filled with battles on floating islands, the legendary battlefields of the Bed Wars, or the predecessor to the Battle Royale genre in Hunger Games. But almost all of us came back, after getting bored with the same old thing over and over, joining the new and old players in 1.12 and beyond. Some will never return, satisfied with a short holiday and Minecraft's latest update, while others, like me, will find a way to return to Minecraft year after year, update after update. The splitting of our community will happen again. There will be another great update that breaks some of your favorite features, now turned bugs to be squashed. But let's not forget our roots. Let's, in the same vein as old people preaching about the good old days, nostalgically look upon the betas and alphas, learning from our old mistakes along the way. Because things weren't better back then. No. But because of the nature of time, there's just more of it behind us compared to what's right within our current grasp in front of us. Here we are, a couple of hours later, entering the video's last couple of sections. I have said a lot. Most of it kind of drawn out and overly complicated, some of it actually enjoyable and digestible, and a lot of it is just me cataloging my life in the form of a video about Minecraft. If you, by my command, skipped to this point, thanks for taking the time to listen to my conclusion. And if you're here after listening to me ramble about my entire life for 3 hours, thank you too. Let's, for a final time, before the video finally cuts to black, talk a bit about the beloved title Minecraft through the 3 main parts of its makeup. The way the gameplay has changed, the way the graphics have changed, and finally, for the first time in depth in this video, how the music has changed. Last but definitely not least, let's end this video. From the very early and grotesque pixel art of the web version to the latest of 1.20 and beyond, Minecraft has changed both in graphics and where these graphics take place. Let's look at some nice visuals and decide when it all started to click, and when it went overboard. The many blocks and items of Minecraft never cease to amaze me with their many use cases. Nothing is impossible within the game of Minecraft from a purely artistic standpoint outside of the very minute details. Look at this, for example. A wooden button sticking through an item frame. Within said item frame we then place a piece of white wool and voila, a toilet paper holder. Things like this could be added into the game with a simple model. Mods like this exist, I'm sure. But what this little exhibition tries to tell you is that with such an expressive game such as Minecraft, that doesn't need to be added. We already have everything we could ever need to make basically anything. The look of Minecraft has now been very static for a very, very long time, at least in its item and block design. Our surroundings, however, never seem to stay the same. We started in a somewhat barren land of grass, hills and water, a couple of trees dispersed between it all. Now instead, huge biomes of varying interest litter the world. Muted yet colorful plateaus of orange stand tall in the mesa biome. Flat yet exciting plains are the home to both plants like sunflowers and roses. Living things like horses, cows and other passive mobs that in themselves haven't changed much at all, but again, their context is forever in movement. We see huge structures littering the land. A village stands abandoned, and cobwebs occupying the broken windows. A desert temple breaks up the monotony of a desert with its small addition of color and adds structure to the otherwise barren landscape. The ocean, once a dark and inhospitable place with a gravel bottom and annoyingly simple life within, now instead has been filled with life. Coral reefs, although rare, make the ocean into a special place in the later updates, giving life to the most overlooked parts of Minecraft's terrain. I don't dislike most of the additions I speak about. In fact, I love most of them. But at the same time, I think that if Minecraft doesn't slow down and rethink some of its proposed additions, we'll have a resurgence of people going back to a quote-unquote simpler time. Just a couple of months ago now, they revealed the cherry blossom trees. Pink, almost magical trees that I think don't have a place within the game. We could already make these trees on our own, with pink wool and glass blocks acting as the leaves. But here we are. Another opportunity for imagination and creativity taken from us. Instead, replaced with a coded into the game solution. This is a great addition to the game for people that play Minecraft as any other game. The token casual. A player base I don't hate, but ultimately the player base that runs the game. I think there will be a day, maybe not in the next update or even within a couple of years, but I think there will be a day when Minecraft goes overboard with its graphics. Be that the addition of fully simulated gases flowing out of our smokestacks as we cook our steak, or water physics that allow us to drain the ocean with a pump. The one thing I do know is that when this happens, Minecraft has betrayed its own aesthetic. It has already stretched it a fair bit with ray tracing and similar graphic additions. But the devs have so far managed to step right behind that line for a while now. So all I'm waiting for is that last step. The step towards something else, and something distinctly un-Minecraft-like. In the beginning there was simply adding and removing. Then there was redstone. Flying and conquering of really big and ugly mansions made out of chocolate-like wood, underground cities underneath what was before Bedrock, and material more precious than diamonds. The early game hasn't changed much. We still go around punching the bark of a tree with our bare fists to make a pickaxe that we later on discard. We mine for ores like coal and iron to craft items like torches and better equipment like iron pickaxes and armor. This gameplay loop, the early game, hasn't changed much at all in the last 10 years. There are ways that it has been updated, sure. Villages now provide easy food for new players fortunate enough to spawn next to them. There are more examples of this, but our fists hitting a tree will probably and should probably never change. What has changed is literally everything else. The mid-game, getting diamonds and entering the nether, is essentially the same, but has been padded out with things like deeper caves for more exploration and more biomes in the nether, also for more exploration. This is a trend towards casual play, focusing on new stuff rather than focusing on honing your play and creativity. This new trend is one I don't enjoy all that much. I think that's pretty obvious from watching this video of a crazed fan longing for the good old days. But I think there are additions here, like the new cave update, that are superb in theory, but also in the practical sense. Outside of a couple of distinct features. I hate the new blocks it brings, but I like the new caves. I hate the addition of netherite and its respective place in the meta, but I love the new underground biomes. Minecraft has changed a lot in the various updates. Updates that I spend a lot of time speaking about in this video, but let's, for a final time, single out a couple and remind ourselves which updates are worth playing. I promise to be quick about it. The best single update to play for a fully featured, most balanced and nostalgic feel, I recommend to you the 1.0 update. This is the update that added the Ender Dragon and with it, an ending. But this update has some truly annoying stuff, like enchanting taking 50 levels and various quality of life features missing from the game. If you want a hard, devout nostalgia trip without a rush to kill the Ender Dragon or to get enchantments, I recommend to you the Beta 1.8 update. The best experience for people who want to have endless fun in a comparably simple sandbox. Huge projects like perimeters are nigh on impossible here because of the lack of slimestone and enchantments. This update shows you the game, mine and craft, in its simplest yet fully playable state. If you, like me, want a technical and drawn-out endgame, I recommend to you, with all of my being, the 1.12 update, where iron farms peaked, bedrock was obtained, and the game's very own random number generator was figured out. Last, the most important one. If you like to play Minecraft just like any other game, or lack the same almost insane love for the mechanics that I have, aka you're a totally normal guy or just new to the game, I recommend to you whatever update is the latest one to come out. It has the most stuff to do and the most things to tinker with, although on a more casual level. The one thing that will ground you as a long-time player of Minecraft through its many updates is the music. Let's finally take a somewhat shallow dive into the two main albums of C418 and the many songs within, what they mean to me, what makes them so good, and why adding new music to Minecraft is okay. Let's start with the most pressing issue. I have somehow not really talked to you about Minecraft's music throughout this entire video. Now, that might be because, just like how Doom doesn't need to tell you that the demons you are fighting are evil, it's just granted within the context of the game. But it's probably simpler than that. I'm not a musician in any way. First, a couple of highlights we all cherish. The third song on C418's album titled Minecraft Volume Alpha, Subwoofer Lullaby. I love this song with my entire being. A gentle yet hopeful track that, when heard in game, always used to annoy me. This will be a pattern as we speak on the later tracks, but I used to hate the Minecraft soundtrack. Now, in today's eyes, I couldn't really live my life without it. I find myself listening to songs like this, Subwoofer Lullaby, with its slow yet calming sound as I walk home from school or as I write stuff like this very sentence. This hopeful feeling is a thread you can find throughout this entire soundtrack, leading into songs like Living Mouse, with its almost epic parts about 2 minutes in. Further into the soundtrack, we're hit by the song simply titled Minecraft. Minecraft, the song, is what most people think of, next to a song we'll get to later on, as the Minecraft soundtrack. It's so iconic, I think a lot of people know the melody without even once playing the game. A couple of songs later, we come across the song Mice on Venus, one of my absolute favorites. Another song that just feels hopeful, yet somehow sad. That's probably just me projecting as usual though. The last song we'll look at in the first of two main albums is the song titled Sweden, the, in my humble music noob's opinion, greatest song in Minecraft's first album. Sweden is a tune so closely connected to what makes Minecraft into Minecraft that without hearing the song every few hours, the hopeful yet muted piano, the game just doesn't hit the same. It's what cements Minecraft Volume Alpha as one of gaming's best original soundtracks. I want to move on to the next album, but before that, huge shoutouts to the songs Wet Hands, Beginning, Oxygen, Key, and Hagstrom 2. Those are also amazing. The second album, Volume Beta, opens with a song called Key, but more importantly is followed by the 10-minute banger titled Alpha, the most epic Minecraft song within its soundtrack. Alpha feels like an entire journey through a playthrough of Minecraft, with hopeful ups and sad downs. a truly amazing song that I think is often overlooked because of its monstrous length. Volume Beta isn't filled with as many iconic or well-known songs compared to its predecessor, but instead filled with tracks like Blind Spots, a relatively cheery tune that fits perfectly with your average playthrough, heightening it without taking over with its bombastic drums or guitar solos, instead floating in the background while you keep digging that hole under your base. Moog City 2, however, a song that only plays in the end, often scared me as a kid. Well, scared is a bit of a harsh word. It's just a bit creepy is what I'm trying to say, but still a great song. Aria Math, a funky song often heard in-game, is one I don't enjoy that much. It seems to be the album's most liked one according to Spotify's metrics, but alas. Lastly, let's take a look at the last song, my absolute favorite of the entire game. The song simply titled Intro. Intro isn't heard anywhere in the game. In fact, I probably didn't hear it until pretty recently. But today, it haunts me with its gentle piano. If this song was coupled with a certain bad memory of mine, it could probably bring me to tears. A superbly emotional track with a lot of real weight to it. Last, before we move on, let's take a short look at the new additions to the soundtrack. For the update that fixed and changed a lot of Minecraft's underwater features, C418 came back with the understated banger called Axolotl. A song that fits so perfectly with the update it actually shocked me it wasn't just another Volume Beta song. A great addition, but there was one time, recently, when someone other than C418 added a song to the game. The genius behind Celeste's soundtrack. Not everyone was happy to see more music in Minecraft, the same way I didn't want more ores to rival diamonds. But unlike those people, I can't say I disapprove. I like the thought of Minecraft getting more bangers. Pairing the new environments of the newer updates with new songs is what Minecraft has always done. So why is it a problem now? The most well-known of her songs is a music disc titled Pigstep, a funky tune that I don't enjoy all that much, but is still a great addition. One thing I can say is that in another 10 years it will cement itself as a part of the OST, the same way Volume Alpha and Beta did. That's why Minecraft's music, the sometimes occurring but always welcome tune of Sweden or Subwoofer Lullaby, is such an important part of what makes Minecraft into Minecraft. The soothing sounds of these songs breathe life into the otherwise lifeless soundscape of Minecraft and makes it considerably better for it. This is it. The end. The actual real end of the video, and for some not so unexpected reason, the most rewritten part of it. This last section of my video begins with a statement I believe in wholeheartedly. Minecraft is the greatest game of all time. In perpetuity. Some games may tie with it in my lifetime in select categories, and some might even surpass it in a lot of areas. This I know for a fact. But right now, in this instant and probably for my foreseeable future, Minecraft is the greatest single game of all time. Not because of the gripping storyline or lifelike graphics, not because of its innovative gameplay or superb OST, but because this game is more than that. It's more than anything. It's everything you could ever want it to be. That's why Minecraft, from its very conception of being a survival game, from its beta and alpha to the latest of 1.20 updates, is a near perfect game, with valid criticism against it coming from a lack of imagination or boredom. Not because of its combat, that can be changed into whatever you want, not because of its graphics, that with the power of RTX, shaders and texture packs can be changed into whatever you want, or because of its difficulty, its gameplay loop, its lack of features, its abundance of complicated features, or any other criticism is kind of invalid. They are your features. You control them. If you want a casual experience with an abundance of simple, easy to learn but hard to master mechanics, you go to the latest version, filled with content for all types of players. If you want a pure, rewarding yet slow-paced experience with a focus on imagination and perfection of the basics, go play the older beta and alpha versions, preferably one before the addition of sprinting and hunger bars, or to be even more casual, the earlier versions of the legacy console versions with even more restrictions. If you want instead an immensely deep experience with technical play, breaking of limits, and an endless endgame, play the most developed version in 1.12. There are more examples of this, like 1.8 for its combat or 1.7 for its expansive list of mods, showing you that there are fixes to every problem you might face in Minecraft, be that with specific mods or versions. Minecraft is a canvas upon which we paint the very meaning of the game onto. A painting that with every stroke expands like the board of a chess game, except in the fifth dimension. It's truly timeless, both in its gameplay, graphics, and in its music. It's a game that shall be studied for eons, trying to extract the very soul out of its outdated Java codebase, looking for the spark of perfection flickering within. But they'll never find anything substantial outside of its blocky aesthetic, making way for its deep gameplay. There's no doubt in my mind that without the release of Minecraft, my life would be considerably different. Probably worse. There have been a couple of times when I'm sitting quietly in front of my computer, a tired, neutral expression on my face lit by the screen in the basement, where my mom asked me if I feel lonely. It's a valid question, as I sit all by myself fully immersed in a world more interesting than my own. But the answer to the question is always the same. No, I don't feel lonely. I have my friends at a closer than arm's length at all times. A single message will send at least a couple of them into a Discord server within the minute. I would have never met so many of my friends without the common denominator, which is Minecraft for the PlayStation 3, or later on in my life, in school, it acted as the way I found my friend group. People I'm in a call with right this second as of writing this video's script. My proficiency in the English language wouldn't have progressed this far without the game teaching me what a fence is and how to spell furnace so early on in my life. I would have never found a way to so easily spend all of my creativity, instead of spending my energy doing something even less productive. I probably have some sort of ADD. I haven't really checked or been diagnosed in any capacity, but the evidence and signs are all there. But Minecraft made me work my ass off. I wrote this huge video, and I recorded and edited it. I make huge holes to fill with smaller farms. I sit and I mine down literal mountains for days on end, and construct huge projects I don't need to function. This is what Minecraft does to a number of its players. It makes them move in strange ways with their mouse and keyboards doing a seminar, sitting at the very back of the classroom. It makes them see every building that surrounds them in a new light. A blocky light with a limited palette of colors and shapes. A new generation of the Tetris effect now injected into the kids who've played the blocky build game about mining and crafting. These limitations and simple yet uncompromisingly complex rules make us change our thinking. Because Minecraft is ultimately a perfect concoction of compromise. Why? Well, the first thing we notice is its unrealistic graphics, now an obvious choice for its versatility and timelessness, but then a simple and fast way to create somewhat complicated and extravagant graphics with their own distinctive style, feeding on nostalgia from a 16-bit era. Minecraft is blocky. Why? Because making anything as close to Minecraft in the depth of choice between blocks and features would instantly kill any computer from today and probably 15 years into the future. Minecraft is a game of compromises that together create something endless. something close to a game without compromise. This is Minecraft, the endless game without rules, but filled with laws that govern its world. A blocky world of farming and killing, a blocky world of mining and crafting that envelops my entire being after playing it for a while, like the Tetris effect. But I want to call it something else. The Minecraft effect. And it acts as a pointer to just how immersive Minecraft truly is. Somehow the game won't dare to leave my mind for longer than a couple of weeks at a time, pulling me back into its work-like gameplay, its toned down and simple combat, its non-existent story and underwhelming retro graphics. But I still come back to it over and over. I'm well and thoroughly addicted to Minecraft, but not in the way a nicotine addict craves a smoke. I don't want to play Minecraft every day all the time, until I do. I work on mind-numbing projects without any real trade-off outside of the fact that I did that thing, which you and I both know might actually be the greatest trade-off of them all. But then I burn out, halfway through another equally huge project with an even bigger potential. I quit. I leave the server for the last time and either come back as another person, or I never come back to that world at all. But I don't doubt I will eventually come back to the game, in the same way we always find a way to rewatch Star Wars, Breaking Bad and The Lord of the Rings. A constant in an ever-evolving world of new stuff to watch and play, fighting for our limited time on this planet. There's no doubt in my mind that I will play Minecraft to some extent in 10 or even 20 years into the future. Its gameplay will have changed, and even the fundamentals will have to some extent. But it will then become obvious that Minecraft was the greatest game of all time when it was published all those years ago, still standing strong and raising yet another generation of kids with Let's Plays and underbaked animation videos, Bed Wars and Skyblock. What I keep on saying, in different roundabout ways, is that Minecraft really isn't a game for me anymore. It's something else at this point. Almost like a holiday that I yearn for and thoroughly enjoy once a year. I don't really have a word for it and I don't think I really need one. All I know is that, man, I love this. This thing that is Minecraft. Maybe not in this instant. Minecraft and I have been through a lot lately. I mean, this video is going to be counted in hours, but I don't doubt I'll be back. And when I do come back, I'm going to fall in love with it all over again. Don't worry, I'm done talking very soon. On screen you'll see the Patreons that supported this little project of mine. A project that I've wanted to make for as long as this channel started pumping out videos that aren't outdated memes or school projects. So here we are, over 3 hours later, with a video about Minecraft. I wanted to talk about the new Minecraft spin-off called Minecraft Legends for this video, but I still haven't gotten around to playing it, so I said fuck it and moved on. Sorry if that was something you really wanted to see from me. There's another sorry incoming too. I'm sorry for killing my channel for a couple of months while making this video. I thought I was faster than I actually am, but that's about it. Once again, thanks for supporting me by subscribing and liking and commenting, and extra thanks to my Patreons. without further ado, I'm done here.